Part 33. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 322. At the same time. Iti City Center. Daybreak Counseling Center. Husandeo and Suzayasu walked out with calm expressions. Husandeo took out a clean handkerchief from somewhere and carefully wiped the scalpel in his hand. Actually, I really don't want this. Suzayasu shook off the blood on her fist, and after hearing Husandeo's words, she remained silent and did not respond. When Husandeo saw that Suzayasu ignored him, he could only say to himself, "Sister Su, do you still remember that? I don't remember the name, what that woman said." Suzayasu. Do you believe there is a God? This sentence. Suzayasu remained silent. Husandeo was thoughtful and wanted to laugh, but couldn't. To be honest, when I heard this sentence, I really had goosebumps. Although I clearly know that this phenomenon is a physiological phenomenon caused by the contraction of the erector pili muscles when humans feel cold or fearful or other stimuli. Suzayasu clenched her pink fist as big as a casserole. Speak humanly. Husandeo shook his head helplessly. Well, in short, I am a little concerned about why she said this. But there is no one left, so I can't verify it. Maybe she just said it accidentally, who knows? The doctor didn't explain much. When the two walked out of the psychological counseling center, it was raining heavily on the street. In the distance, police sirens sounded wildly. Wee-wee-woo. The evacuation sirens used to warn citizens to evacuate are ringing like crazy without any money. Husandeo and Suzayasu looked slightly startled. What happened? Then the sound insulation effect of the psychological counseling center is also very good, right? There's so much movement outside, but you can't feel it at all inside. Pedestrians on the road were already in chaos. They all ran away. Husandeo didn't waste any time and rushed directly into the heavy rain. He grabbed a passerby who was holding an umbrella and asked, "What are you all running for? What happened?" Passerby lowered his head, not hiding anything in his hurry, and said quickly, "What the hell? Are you still wandering around on the street? Hurry up and hide." The news just broadcast an emergency report, saying that there are two extremely vicious thugs who are meeting in the city. It's very scary to kill people. Listen, all the police cars in the city are dispatched and they are fighting fiercely. Husandeo was stunned when he heard this. Thug. Rush. Is it that intense? What do thugs look like? I heard that one of the thugs was wearing a bunny mask. It was very cute. I don't know what he looked like, but his body shape was pretty easy to recognize. He was short, fat, stupid, and very fat. Suzayasu's heart tightened, and she quickly stepped forward, her tall body directly blocking the rain for the two of them. She pointed to her face. "Does the mask you are talking about look like mine?" Passerby raised his head. "Not high enough. Lift again. Lift again. Again." He finally saw the mask on Suzayasu's face clearly. Oh, they look very similar. They seem to match. Mom, I want to go home. Passerby's umbrella didn't care anymore. When he saw that the couple's mask on Suzayasu's face was the same as Li Erpang's mask, he didn't react at first. But his voice became weaker and weaker, and finally his scalp was numb with fear. His face turned pale, he ran away, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "It's fat." Husandeo's tone was affirmative. With such obvious features, there should be no one else but the little fat man. Suzayasu clenched her fists hard. Silent anger simmers. Walk. Suzayasu had no expression on her face, stepping hard on the rain and walking towards the direction where the siren sounded the loudest. Boom, boom, boom. Wherever Suzayasu passed, the rain splashed into flowers, and the ground seemed to be shaking. Husandeo smacked his lips. Sister Su is very angry. After thinking about it, Husandeo shook his head and said, "It seems like something serious is about to happen." Inside the bust of Buddha, Yulin looked at the scene in front of her and didn't know where to start. There are just too many people. It is roughly estimated that there are hundreds of people crowded in this hall. In addition to some ragged victims who clearly looked like they had been kidnapped, there were also many people wearing full covering robes who looked like members of the Dawn sect, kneeling on the ground in the same posture, chanting in a low voice. Take another look. Yulin discovered that these missing persons were much more than the number reported by Cao Anbang. It may be because Cao Anbang concealed some data. Another possibility is that what the Dawn sect is planning is not limited to Itai City. There may be sporadic missing cases outside Itai City, but they are not included in the statistics. After all, in this age of advanced technology, to make a person disappear is not as simple as covering his mouth, tying his hands and taking him away. Embrace the dawn. Embrace the dawn. Amidst the chants of hundreds of people, a thin man in robes walked in from another passage entrance. Yulin was condescending, squinting her eyes and staring at the figure. The man in robes slowly walked to the high platform. The moment the mysterious man in robes appeared, everyone raised their heads and looked at the mysterious man in robes, and fell silent instantly. The man in the robe whispered something, but Yulin couldn't hear it clearly. Several other members around him, who seemed to have a slightly lower status in the Shugwang sect, quickly walked to the edge of the hall, holding open flames, and lit a row of jars at the edge of the hall. Puff, 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 puff. As the fire tanks were ignited one by one, the hall became even brighter. The swaying firelight cast everyone's figures onto the stone wall, twisting and twisting. The whole scene looked very strange. Except for the sound of the swaying flames, no one spoke in the empty hall inside the big-bellied Buddha. Only the ups and downs of breathing were left. The whole scene was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. What do they want to do? Yulin did not take action immediately. After all, it seems that the most threatening person on the other side may be the mysterious man standing on the high platform. He may be an apostle. Or maybe not. Yulin remembered that in another future, the doomsday disaster broke out completely, eternal night fell, and 4 apocalypse nights walked the earth to spread disaster, and then the Dawn sect appeared in the sight of all survivors. This religion is not a weird religion. They use the food resources they scavenge everywhere to lend a helping hand to every surviving survivor and absorb them into the Dawn religion. They are unable to fight against the knights of the apocalypse. They are just settling in a corner in the apocalypse, just to survive. While living, spread a little soothing chicken soup for the soul. And Yulin remembers clearly that their slogan is, "Embrace the dawn." But why did Shugwang sect appear in advance? It seems that it has developed to a certain scale. Without 3 to 5 years of planning, this bust of Buddha would not have been excavated to such a mature scale. And this is most likely just one of their strongholds. Because back then, Yulin was one of the frontline fighters and had not had much contact with this organization that was spreading chicken soup for the soul. But in his impression, Dawn sect should not be such a weird organization. What happened? What is the Dawn sect planning? In order to find the answer, Yulin embarked on a journey and stood here at this moment. Stood in front of them. It's as if something is driving everything. Just when Yulin was lurking in the darkness and watching everything. On the high platform, the mysterious man muttered something, breaking the dead silence that could be heard as the drop of a needle dropped. #UN% at FUK UN #@% #UN BEA #at KKKKK at. What the hell? Yulin listened intently. But he found that he couldn't even understand a single punctuation mark, let alone the words, of what the mysterious man said loudly. It sounds like some ancient language, with obscure pronunciation and incomprehensible pronunciation. Just when the mysterious man on the high platform started chanting the curse. Under the high platform, Everyone kneeling on the ground focused their eyes on the high platform. There was a bit more piety and fanaticism in those empty and lifeless eyes. Ah, ah, ah. Everyone seemed to be echoing the rhythm of the mysterious mouth, howling and screaming. This situation gave Yilin the feeling that a group of psychopaths were communicating, and socializing in a way that normal people could not understand. Yilin frowned. He felt that the atmosphere was getting weirder and weirder. But I can't understand it. This feeling is very depressing. It's like a good movie with an extra layer of hazy mosaic. Just when Yilin was considering taking action immediately or continuing to wait and see what these people were up to, Yilin's expression changed slightly. As the surrounding fire spread, a strange incense filled the air at some point. It's fragrant. Yilin got a lot of information from Sheng Chunro's video, and she had already reacted when the fragrance was about to penetrate her nose. The things burning in the fire altar are all the incense mentioned in Sheng Chunro's video. Yilin only inhaled a little bit, and the smell was not too strong. But just a trace of the fragrance made the scene in front of Yilin's eyes slightly distorted. The voice of the mysterious man singing became louder and louder, as if coming from his ears, and also seemed to come from the depths of his mind, becoming increasingly clear. Suddenly, the mysterious man raised his head and looked in the direction where Yilin was hiding. It is obvious that Yilin is in the state of following like a shadow, with zero sense of existence. And from the angle of the mysterious man, it was impossible to see Yilin's existence. But it happened that at this moment, he raised his head and looked at the shadow Yilin was hiding. Embrace the dawn. In the obscure language, the mysterious man suddenly chuckled and mixed in such a human saying. In an instant, a dazzling light shone from the mysterious man. Dazzling circles of light appeared one after another, like a miracle. It was like the legendary divine grace coming to the world, rippling around, illuminating the entire hall as bright as day, very dazzling. And those whispers seemed to turn into sounds of nature, like a poem of a prosperous age played with instruments that did not belong to this world, making people indulge in it unknowingly. Yilin's pupils shrank. Light, quickly. Yilin didn't have time to react. The warm-looking light suddenly blurred towards Yilin's face, illuminating all the shadows. At this moment, Yilin had nothing to hide. Yilin felt as if there was a bang in her head. When he opens his eyes, in front of me is the endless night. The sky is filled with stars. Looking into the distance, skyscrapers were cut in half. The raging river was frozen into glaciers. The steel bridge was twisted into twists. Yilin's eyes widened. As if in a dream. This is the end of the world. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 323. At the same time. Capital. People's Square. A cute girl with braids was sitting obediently on a bench eating ice cream. Xiao 11, Xiao 11, Xiao 11, why are you running around again? A beautiful woman with a good figure came hurriedly. Xiao 11 raised her head, a stream of white liquid dripping from the corner of her mouth. That's the juice after the ice cream melts. Hello, mommy. What are you talking about? The beautiful young woman rubbed Xiao 11's head lovingly. Mama taught Xioxi to be polite to people. Xiao 11 licked the ice cream, showing an expression of praising me quickly. Yes, yes, my Xioxi is the most polite. Suddenly. Right now. Snapped. Xiao 11's little body trembled slightly, and the unfinished ice cream she held in her hand fell to the ground and turned into paste. She suddenly stood up, raised her head, looked in a certain direction, and stared deeply. The moment Xiao 11 stood up, the beautiful young woman's movements suddenly froze on the spot, her eyes were empty, she had lost all her energy, and she was like a soulless puppet. Streams of gorgeous light danced and passed in Xiao 11's innocent eyes. How come? Someone accidentally touched the anchor. Xiao 11 shook her head, but now is not the time. It's too early. Too early. Too early. Finished. Xiao 11 raised her little palm high and slapped it hard in the air in front of her. Snapped. In front of an apparently empty place, Xiao 11 slapped her palm down. The scenery near her palm was slightly distorted, and several strange textures appeared out of thin air. After slapping this palm into the air, Xiao 11 lowered her head and murmured to herself. Should I not be violating the rules if I do this? As long as no one finds out, it won't be considered a violation. Well, it doesn't count. The beautiful young woman's eyes regained their luster. She lowered her head and found that Xiao 11's ice cream had accidentally fallen to the ground. You kid, why are you so careless? Mom, I want more. It's not good for children to eat too much. Xiao 11 will have diarrhea by then. I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Okay, okay, mommy will buy it for you. Yilin looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar scenery in front of her. In the distance, there was a faint roar of a giant beast. Strange shadows lurked on the ground. Here. It's the end of the world. It is the end of the world that he remembers. Hun Dan, if you survive in the end, what would you most like to do? Next to him, a familiar voice sounded. Yilin looked at the person next to her with an indifferent expression. Molly was wrapped in a heavy cotton-padded jacket, her nose was red from the cold, and her whole body was shivering. Getting married? Having children? Yilin subconsciously said the lines in her memory. That's it, Molly curled her lips with a disdainful expression, you're not pursuing it. Yilin remained expressionless and continued, work at sunrise and rest at sunset, working 9 to 5, getting a salary, fooling the boss, caring for your wife, making money for milk powder, and also thinking about your children going to kindergarten and training classes. When you buy a house in a school district, you still have to think about when your children grow up. Stop, 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 Molly waved her hand, don't you find it annoying? It's annoying, why not? But it's still much better than now. Why don't you think about yourself? Just think about your children. For example, where will the wedding be held? Antarctica, clean. Molly looked like there was something wrong with her and said with a smile, have you forgotten that the Antarctic continent has been bombed, and we can no longer stay there? Then, let's wait until the dust settles and build another one. Who do you want to be with? With whom to build Antarctica? You know I'm talking about marriage. I haven't thought about this yet, why are you pinching me? Soulless. Molly lowered her head, not wanting Yilin to see her expression. Familiar memories, familiar lines, familiar scenes, but they are different people. Yilin felt like she was walking like a zombie when she said these lines. This is a fantasy. But he clearly knew that this was an illusion and everything in front of him was not real. But Yilin still couldn't help it. He clenched his fists hard and asked, Ling Yi, where are you? Molly looked up again. The expression is blank. Ling Yi, who is it? Base. The moment Molly said those words, the scenery in front of her suddenly cracked. Crash. Like glass shattered to the ground. When Yilin came to his senses, he was in a dilapidated tent again. Outside the tent, the fire shot into the sky, reflecting shadows that fell on the tent. Including Yilin, a dozen people crowded into a small tent. Yilin raised her head and scanned the dozen dirty faces. For some reason, he couldn't see the faces of those people clearly. But he obviously should know. They are. Yilin suddenly felt a pain in her head. At this time, there was a tall man in armor with a tragic expression. He walked to the center of the tent and spread out a map. The conquering knight is coming across the sea with his 10 men, and according to eyewitness information, the Death Knight and his 8 shadows will also pass through this route. If they come together, there will definitely be a fight. This may be an opportunity for us to fish in troubled waters. At the very least, in order to weaken the strength of their men, we must not allow our territory to be reduced any more. But this operation is very risky. Our opponents are two knights of the apocalypse. It is a narrow escape. The armored man raised his head, with a determined look in his eyes. This may be the only chance for us humans to defeat the natural disaster. I will definitely go, you. Oh, if the world ends and no one can survive, it won't make much difference whether they go or not. It's a pity that Morendi is dead. If he is still here, we will do our best to find an invitation letter for him. SHH. In the tent, everyone closed their mouths at the same time, suppressing the despair and spreading silently. Yulin felt cold all over. Around. Someone squeezed his hand hard. The hand was equally cold. No warmth at all. Yulin turned her head slowly and forcefully little by little. The person next to me is Molly. Yulin, who had been silent all this time, took a deep breath. Where is Ling Yi? This short sentence seemed to exhaust all Yulin's strength. When he finished, everyone in the tent turned their heads blankly and looked at Yulin. Base. In front of Yulin, the scene changed again. Scenes that had been deeply impressed in his memory appeared quickly like a revolving lantern. Yulin was like an outsider, standing amid the flames of war and countless monsters, witnessing it all again helplessly. Those battles. The Knight of the Apocalypse who controls his mount and makes the world change color with every move he makes. The revolving lantern jumps quickly. That day. It's raining in the sky. The rain fell on Yulin's body, sending up white smoke. This is acid rain. Yulin looked down and saw that his hands were covered with wet soil, and there was blood between his fingers. Here it is. Yulin raised her head. He happened to see a small earthen tomb he had built under his hands. There is a tombstone on it. The tombstone is empty, and there is no time to engrave it. But Yulin knew whose name should be engraved on it. Yulin looked around. Originally, in his memory, under this oppressive acid rain, Ling Yi was by his side. But here, there is none. There is only this rain, this eternal night that will never usher in the dawn, this cold earth grave, and Molly who has lost her warmth in the earth grave. It's this world, that's wrong. Yulin lowered his head and let the acid rain wash away the soil and blood on his hands. Snapped. Abruptly. As Yulin savored this realistic illusion, she felt a buzzing on the back of her head, and the scenery in front of her shook violently. It felt like someone jumped up high and slapped him hard on the back of the head until he died. Yulin felt a headache. It was like his whole body was cracked. At this moment, the scenery in front of him twisted, rotated, and quickly faded. When Yulin opened his eyes again, he returned to the cave where the bust of Buddha was dug. In front of Yulin's eyes, the layers of halo that made Yulin fall into an illusion had disappeared. Yulin spent less than a second quickly checking her surroundings. The mysterious man who was emitting light strangely on the high platform had disappeared. It was as if it had never appeared before. Yulin looked down. Everyone in the square suddenly took out a strange-shaped dagger. Whether it was members of the Dawn sect or missing people abducted from various places, all the people kneeling on the ground were muttering something in their mouths, holding the weird-shaped dagger with both hands, and raising it high and above their heads. Ministry, with a crazy and pious expression. The scene of hundreds of people kneeling on the ground, holding daggers in the air, was frozen in this scene. In an instant, this strange scene reminded Yulin of a word. Ceremony. Yes, this group of people seems to be performing some ancient and mysterious ritual. The mysterious man released a halo of light on the high platform, and combined with the burning incense around him, brought this mysterious ceremony to a climax. Yulin was surprised. What do they want to do? Facing this mysterious and grand ceremony, as soon as Yulin had this idea, The answer appeared before his eyes. I saw all the people holding the ceremonial dagger high. The posture of holding the dagger tightly with both hands only lasted for a second, and then they turned the dagger over at the same time and stabbed themselves hard into the heart. Laugh. The sounds of hundreds of people, hundreds of knives, and hundreds of hands stabbing the heart actually converged into one voice. Yilin didn't stop it, and it was impossible to stop it. They have lost their minds, and no matter who comes, there is no way they can stop them. Unless Yilin can kill everyone here in an instant. But for them, the outcome makes no difference. Yilin held his breath and chose to wait and see. Since he couldn't change the outcome, since he couldn't save anyone, he really wanted to witness the outcome of the ceremony with his own eyes. A large amount of blood spurted out from everyone's chest. Their attack was so cruel that they cut open the heart and let the blood spurt out as much as possible. The strong smell of blood spread in the narrow space, covering up the aroma burning in the fire tank. In the blink of an eye, everyone's blood seeped into the ground. A faint blue light actually appeared on the ground. Only then did Yilin discover that there was a huge formation pattern on the soles of those people's feet. Because of the dim lighting and the large number of people, they knelt directly on the formation pattern. Before the pattern emitted blue light, Yilin did not notice the existence of this strange formation. Blue light is becoming more and more popular. Wisps of blue light, which seemed to be filled with mysterious information or data, rose from everywhere on the ground, and then gathered above everyone's heads. Yilin followed where the light converged and raised her head. Seeing this, Yilin looked stunned. The scene before her eyes actually made Yilin feel familiar. The stream of light that gathered over the hall actually tore a gap in the space. One by one, flowing light cubes emerged from the cracks. Li. Suddenly, a strange and shrill voice surged from the crack. In an instant, Yilin's ears were buzzing and her eyes were filled with stars. Subconsciously he touched his ears, and his ears bled from the sound. This is a summons. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 324. Yilin was indeed familiar with this scene. This is clearly the same as the scene when his mount, Dire, was summoned, as if he was retreating. But there was no one in front of him who had activated a summoning skill. Instead, through this mysterious ritual, using the lives of hundreds of people as a guide, a certain creature is summoned to this world. Yilin's eyes narrowed, and she endured the pain in her ears as she looked at the crack in the air. Along with the weird roar, the flickering blocks quickly reorganized in front of the crack and turned into a huge claw. Yilin could roughly deduce through visual inspection that this creature that had not yet been summoned was extremely large. That claw alone can easily hold a human in its claws without any pressure. Ground. Everyone who fell to the ground one by one and had lost their vital signs had long lost rays of light like blue sand converging into the cracks. This scene is like their lives, turned into a little bit of crystal clear essence, becoming the nutrient to summon the unknown creature. In a narrow space. The wind is blowing everywhere, and the special effects are full. Yilin's hair was blown back, making a whirring sound. At this moment, his heart was messy. He never expected that the Shuguang sect, which was not consistent with his memory, would actually create such a huge moth. Yilin's mind is now full of doubts. After being caught in the mysterious man's light, is his revolving memory a mistake, or is it a real memory? Why is there no presence of Ling Yi in the memory? Everything has changed, but why is he the only one still there? Is that mysterious man's ability a skill from the tower, or is it? Everything is extremely strange to Yilin, but yet it seems familiar. Rumble, rumble. When Yilin was confused. Li. The mysterious creature stretched out its claws and roared again. Just the aftermath of this mysterious creature's appearance shook the surrounding stone walls, and pieces of gravel peeled off, cracked, and collapsed from above. Crash. The entire Buddha statue shook crazily as the mysterious creature appeared. This place is going to collapse. This is an irregular project. Modern tools were used to hollow out the inside of the Buddha statue, which is not stable in the first place. It is not surprising that the Buddha statue completely collapsed under the impact of this wave. Among the countless falling rubble, a terrifying black shadow more than 10 meters long suddenly appeared from the light of the crack. Lee. The black shadow spread its wings. The narrow space could not accommodate the monster to stretch its waist, and cracks appeared in the stone walls on both sides in the blink of an eye. This place is going to collapse. And right now. In front of Yi Lin's eyes, familiar reminders appeared one after another. The moment she saw the prompt clearly, Yi Lin's heart sank. Compulsory real-life tasks are now released. Area, Tower of Death. Location, Longguo, Itai City. Task restrictions, none. Difficulty, unknown. Real mission, complete annihilation. Time limit, none. Punishment for mission failure, 20,000 death points deducted when there are not enough death points, obliterate. Task reward, unknown, will be distributed based on the final task contribution. Another mandatory realistic task. Really? Yi Lin was both surprised and not surprised. Not surprisingly, the unknown creature appeared in a very convincing way, which indeed attracted the tower to intervene. Surprisingly, a mysterious creature summoned by a mere dawn sect through this weird ancient ritual actually caused such an abnormality. Unknown difficulty, no task time limit, no time limit. Even the identity of the creature is a series of question marks. It can be imagined that the difficulty of this matter is far higher than that of rejuvenation of the undead. The only thing Yi Lin is thankful for is that he still has more than 30,000 DP. Taking a step back, if this creature cannot be killed in the end, his DP will be enough to deduct the mission penalty, so that he will not fall into the miserable situation of being forcibly wiped out. The half-length Buddha statue, which was carved from the mountain wall and was a relic that had been beaten by wind and wind for thousands of years, completely died on this day. Before everything collapsed in front of her, Yi Lin only did 3 things in the last 10 seconds. First, quickly obtain the Krypton Gold Appearance magic cloak and wear a mask. Second, activate Shadow Kill, turn into a tiny shadow, and escape from here. Third, silently open the communication panel, find Zhao Yulong's name, and send a message. Problem occurs. 20 minutes ago. It is raining sadly in Itai City. V5 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 V5. The sound of sirens from all directions broke the silence of the night. All passers-by retreated. They had already received news that there were very cruel thugs causing chaos in Itai City, so ordinary citizens naturally did not dare to go out on the streets. Chu 222. As soon as Li Erpang's conspicuous figure emerged from the corner of the street, he was hit by a hail of bullets without warning, making Li Erpang scream and bleed all over his body. I won't be polite if you shoot me again. Li Erpang was angry, very angry. If it weren't for the fact that he was covered in fat and his defense was extremely high, maybe this bullet, which had absolutely no martial ethics, could have shot the little fat man until his body was covered with blood-stained chrysanthemums. Kill. With Cao Anbang taking the lead, the entire police force in Itai City was mobilized, just to encircle and suppress the 2 thugs Li Erpang and Zhu Tianzong. Carrying Sheng Chunro, who was unconscious, on his back, Zhu Tianzong walked nimbly through the alleys, walking smoothly on the slippery ground. His movements were nimble and unusual. His attributes and abilities were not to the point where he could withstand bullets like the little fat man, so he simply gave the honorable task of tanking to the little fat man and ran very fast. But even though the little fat man had very thick fat and extremely high defense, He couldn't withstand the waves of firepower, and his health plummeted. It's so careless. Li Erpang was heartbroken. He didn't expect that Cao Anbang would turn his back on him faster than flipping through a book. He would take action as soon as he asked. In the Litai Central Hospital, fortunately, Li Erpang and Zhu Tianzong reacted very quickly. When they sensed that the other party was about to take action, they decisively jumped out of the window and fled, luckily escaping the first wave of fire. But Cao Anbang seemed to have expected that the little fat man and the two would not die under the first wave of fire. The police team, armed to the teeth, surrounded the hospital 3 times inside and 3 times outside. The little fat man spent a huge price to fight his way out of the hospital despite a hail of bullets. Those are 3 rare level props. You're too stupid to pay me. Li Erpang felt like he was bleeding deep inside. Even in the trial, he had never been so embarrassed. Of course there is, but others don't know. If others don't know, then they don't have it. Zhu Tianzong raised his head expressionlessly. He jumped up, flew up, and smashed the camera with 2 fingers. You should draw your sword. Zhu Tianzong shook his head. No, there is no sword in the hand, but there is a sword in the heart. This is the highest state of the sword. I'm sorry. Li Erpang was so angry that he vomited blood. Note that this is not an exaggerated figure of speech. But out of extreme anger, Li Erpang actually spat out a mouthful of blood. After all, he is seriously injured now. This kid didn't feel so stupid last time we met, right? Have you been deceived? Why do you feel like there are so many pits growing in your brain? Who is so cruel that he won't even let go of a child who hasn't fully developed his emotional intelligence? Li Erpang and Zhu Tianzong once again finished taking care of the camera above their heads. Just as they emerged from the alley, they saw the roar of an engine in the distance. A police car, as if desperate, turned on its full power and headed towards Li Erpang and Zhu Tianzong. The two sped over and launched a suicide attack. Li Erpang was so frightened that even though he was a power apostle, he couldn't withstand such a collision. Even if he can't die, it will be very dangerous if his health value drops again. He suddenly envied Zhu Tianzong. Before Li Erpang could react, Zhu Tianzong relied on his amazing agility to predict the route of the police car in advance and jumped very far while carrying Sheng Chunro on his back. Fight! Li Erpang gritted his teeth. Although he looked very agile, his body fat limited his agility, making it impossible for him to avoid the car immediately. Since we can't avoid it, then fight. Besides Sister Su, who has my fat man ever been afraid of? No one. Li Erpang's eyes narrowed deeply, and his palms glowed with a frightening golden light. Family secrets. Powerful Prajna Palm. In the police car, the person driving the car was clearly Cao Anbang. He evacuated the residence in advance, and under the surveillance system, the little fat man's size was impossible to hide from. He has mobilized the entire police force in Itai city and laid a dragnet in the city center. These demons must not be allowed to live. They destroy all living beings. We save sentient beings. Embrace the dawn. Cao Anbang smiled crookedly, his expression was pious and crazy, and he murmured quickly, showing his evil charm and madness. This expression completely subverted the upright and awe-inspiring image Cao Anbang showed in front of others, as if he was a different person. But it's more like, he's broken. The crazy police car rushed towards the little fat man. Die, die, die. The devil must die. Your existence will destroy this world. Boom. Suddenly, a huge body, like a god descending from heaven, fell from the sky and landed suddenly between Li Erpang and the police car. Everything happened in a flash of lightning. Li Erpang didn't have time to react, and Cao Anbang, who was in the police car, didn't have time to react either. That huge and familiar figure had already stood in front of Li Erpang, blocking the car for Li Erpang. unmoving as a mountain. A sweet and soft voice, but with unwavering strength. With a smile on her face, Suzayasu was fearless, stretched out her hands, and hugged the police car with her flesh and blood body. It was impossible for Cao and Bang to step on the brakes. He had already stepped on the accelerator and slammed into Suzayasu. Suzayasu looked like a wall. Also like a shield. Li Erpang was stunned. At the last moment, he finally reacted, and the golden light in his palms also restrained somewhat. Collect again and again. In the end, Li Erpang's slap hit Suzayasu's rock-hard buttocks gently. Snap. One hip is matched with the palm, and the bow is moved left and right, and the hand is raised and lowered to grasp firmly. Li Erpang dared to swear a poisonous oath to the sky and cut off his descendants. This was definitely a coincidence. Kakaka. In front of Suzayasu, the front of the police car suddenly collapsed under the huge reaction force, and the hood twisted. Under the influence of inertia, the police car turned its butt into the sky and flew high. Suzayasu's complexion turned pale in an instant, and the bones all over his body made a terrible sound. He opened his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his health dropped sharply. Li Erpang was stunned again. He pressed his palms on Suzayasu's buttocks and forgot to move away. The corners of Suzayasu's mouth were full of blood, and her face was as white as paper under the night sky. But she smiled sweetly, turned her back to the little fat man, and said softly, "I am coming." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 325. At the same time. In the mountain Col. Here, the earth is shaking. When Yilin turned into a shadow and escaped from the half-length Buddha statue, the Buddha statue collapsed completely. Huge rocks continued to collapse from the cliff on the top of the mountain. The scene looked like the end of the world. Rumble, rumble. Yilin was still hit randomly by the cold rain on her face and had no time to wipe it off. He looked solemnly at the huge figure in the sky with its wings spread out under the night rain, and fell into deep thought. Li. The giant beast looked up to the sky and roared, seeming to express its joyful emotions, and also seemed to be crying and mourning. Yilin, who did not understand animal language, could only make assumptions and could not know the true emotions of this creature. At this moment, Yilin could finally see the posture of the giant beast clearly through the faint moonlight. The giant beast's wings were spread out, and the space between the wings was nearly 20 meters long. The moment the giant beast spread its wings, countless rubbles in the entire space were swept into the sky with a strong wind, like a sandstorm, covering the sky and the sun, and the sound was huge and terrifying. The violent wind and rocks flowing all around hit Yilin, and they continuously took away Yilin's health points, which dropped rapidly. The strong wind was filled with an unpleasant fishy smell, like the smell of aged rotten meat that had been stored in jars and rotted into blood. It assaulted the nostrils and made Yilin feel nauseous. Beside the giant beast, streaks of blue flowing sand wrap around the giant beast's side strangely. What is that blue sand? The giant beast suddenly fluttered in the sky, twisting its body wildly. In the darkness, Yilin discovered strange-shaped tails with cold red lights flashing at the ends. They were twisting rapidly behind them, making strange hissing sounds. Is it avoiding the fine sand? Tick-tock tick-tock. Just as Yilin was pondering the scene before her. Along with the rain, strange pieces of meat fell from the giant beast, and along with the smelly blood, they fell around Yilin. Yilin did not dare to be careless in front of unknown creatures. He held the blood jasmine tightly and spread his telekinesis perception to the limit. All changes within the perception range were under control. On the ground, Yilin quickly avoided the pieces of flesh peeled off from the giant beast, for fear of being stained. After all, Yilin didn't know what the consequences would be if he got involved. No one wanted to set an example and be a guinea pig. Bang bang bang. A piece of meat the size of a fist fell and hit Yilin's side. The moment it made contact with the ground, white smoke erupted. Wherever the piece of meat fell, it melted and rotted at a speed visible to the naked eye, and turned into blood in the blink of an eye, leaving pits of varying sizes on the stone ground. Seeing this scene, Yilin's expression changed slightly. Li. The giant beast once again spread its wings fiercely, raised its head and screamed into the sky. Buzz. The shrill scream once again made Yilin's ears ring and her eyes flash with stars. The strong wind stirred up by the flapping wings almost pressed Yilin to the ground, making it difficult to move. Fortunately, this giant beast didn't notice Yilin, who was as small as an ant on the ground, either because of poor eyesight or a big appetite. In the blink of an eye, it flew high into the sky and flew in a certain direction. This is trouble. Yilin roughly identified the direction in which the giant beast left. Whether it was a coincidence or some other reason, the direction in which it flapped its wings and flew was clearly the center of Itai city. Of course, this is just an estimate. Behemoths are beasts and do not make sense. It may turn around at any time, or it may fly further away. After the giant beast had completely left and the smell around him had faded a lot, Yilin reached out his hand and activated his skill to summon the night dire. Accompanied by a familiar stream of light, it was almost the same as the appearance of the behemoth not long ago, except that the size was smaller, and the night dire came across the border. Ah, my master, it is so wonderful to see you. Master, you don't know something. While you were away, Miss Molly took all the wheels of this gentleman's car. Shut up, don't talk, be quiet. Yilin quickly and accurately pressed 3 buttons on Nightmare. After issuing the 3 commands, he opened the communication panel again. The strength and size of the giant beast were obviously no longer a problem that he could solve alone. And it's not necessary. Yilin would not be stupid enough to take down this terrifying monster alone. Not worth it. Not long ago, Yilin sent a series of messages to Zhao Yulong in a hurry. Zhao Yulong didn't know the reason at all and replied with a series of questions. Time was running out. After Yilin summoned Night Dire, she took advantage of the opportunity to recover her spiritual power and connected with Zhao Yulong on a voice call. After being connected, before Zhao Yulong had time to blame Yilin for talking too much, Yilin had already told the whole story in the shortest, most concise, and shocking language. Hum. On the other end of the voice line, Zhao Yulong was stunned. Are you kidding me? I don't have time for jokes. But I'd rather you were joking. Now that big guy is flying towards the center of it. My preliminary visual assessment is that it may arrive in half an hour. I don't rule out the possibility that it will turn around midway. I will catch up later. What the hell? Are you making trouble? Didn't you say that big guy can fly? How can you chase him? Oh, that's okay. I'll chase you on a motorcycle. Are you talking nonsense? Zhao Yulong naturally didn't believe it. Anyway, it's up to you. If this matter is not handled well, people will die. Finally, Yilin added. A lot of people will die. I'll come right away. You think of a way to track the movements of that big guy. In short, hold on steady. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, by the way, who is in command over there now? Conductor Oral. What the hell? Lao Zhao was helpless. He also knew that the situation was serious, so he used the fastest speed to assemble a team of the fastest light-armed helicopters in order to rush to Itai City for reinforcements as soon as possible. Time is limited. Yilin knew very well that time was in a hurry and it was unrealistic to summon all the elites of the special group nationwide to Itai City in such a short period of time. So Yilin is already mentally prepared to form a team with Little Fatty and others to fight the boss in Itai City. This is a boss that appears in the real world. The world has changed. Yilin sighed and quickly sent messages to Suzayasu, Li Erpang, Ou Lele, and others. A big boss is coming. Time is running out. How much they can comprehend will be discussed later. Yilin raised her legs and rode on Nightmare. Night Dire said weakly, "My dear master, do I want to transform?" "Oh, actually you know me, I." "Shut up and work on your car first." Yilin suddenly turned the accelerator to the bottom. He quickly glanced at the dial and saw that the fullness level was only 3/4. It seemed that he was reluctant to last the whole journey. However, Yilin has already studied that the energy source of Night Dire is not actually the various fuels added. The Night Dire's real energy source comes from the contaminated fire source fragment. But if the satiety level drops to the bottom, although it can still move, it just looks a little wilted. It's like a human being. Even if he's extremely hungry, he won't be completely unable to move, and he won't die for a while. Maybe he can do something under extreme anger. Rumble. With the roar of the engine, the wine in the oil tank flowed all over the body along the throttle pipe. Nightmare happily burped and became excited in the blink of an eye. The Night Dire roared, activated the jet mode, and the two exhaust pipes spurted out terrifying flames, which swept into the sky in the blink of an eye. The Night Dire, soar into the sky. Go, go, go. I am coming. Suzayasu turned her back to Li Erpang and said softly. In this moment, in this moment, in this moment. Li Erpang felt that his spiritual world was completely static. What can last for 10,000 years once you turn your head? How can the mountains and the earth not merge with each other? How far away the sky and the sea are, and how many limbs are intertwined? All these messy thoughts flashed through Li Erpang's mind. The power side was indeed the power side. Under extreme anger, Li Erpang couldn't control his thoughts at all, and his brain went crazy in an instant. Li Erpang is not good at thinking. I don't like to think either. What is thinking? Is there a slap in the face to make it go away? Suzayasu finished speaking. The shock on Li Erpang's face was completely frozen. 1 second. 2 seconds. Everything in front of me seemed to pass in slow motion. Click, click, click. Under the huge impact, Suzayasu's chest was dented, her ribs were broken, and the sound of her muscles breaking was clearly distinguishable in Li Erpang's ears. Could this be the legendary realm of ancient martial arts? What about the moon in the well? What about the Taoist heart being clear? What about the moon in the mirror, etc.? Am I awesome? No. Sister Su is injured. But what does it have to do with my fat man if Sister Su is injured? Isn't this just right? Didn't my fat man want to run away a long time ago? If you don't run now, you're not a human being. But. Click. The third second. Cao Anbang looked horrified. He never expected that these demons could be so terrifying. They could block a high-speed police car with human flesh and remain motionless. Devil. It is indeed a devil. The front of the entire police car was pinned down by Suzayasu. Under the effect of the immovable mountain skill, she was like a mountain, unmoving. Unless she dies. Police cars take off. And at this moment, there seemed to be a tight string in the little fat man's messy mind that suddenly broke. But why do you always stand in front of me? Li Erpang's strength came out of nowhere, and he let out a beast-like roar from his mouth. In an instant, Suzayasu only heard a crisp sound behind her. Li Erpang was like a rubber ball bouncing high. With a movement of his body, he made a roar of wind and smashed the bulletproof glass of the police car with one palm. He crashed into the cockpit like a discharged cannonball. Vomit. Li Erpang was like a crazy wild boar. He did not hold back at all this time and suppressed Cao Anbang until blood spurted from his mouth. In the rolling police car, the little fat man skillfully clamped Cao Anbang's thighs with his legs. In the narrow cabin, he hammered Cao Anbang's head crazily with his two palms. Bang 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 bang. The police car blocked by Suzayasu flew up high under the influence of inertia and flew out from Suzayasu's head. After flipping several times in mid-air, it hit the ground with a thud. Bang 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 bang. But after landing, the movement in the police car still didn't stop. It was like a certain vibration frequency, and dull sounds continued to come from the police car. The messy police car was parked on the ground, shaking constantly. I don't know how much time passed. Boom. A foot suddenly kicked the twisted car door away. Li Erpang got out of the police car with a dark face. In his hand, dragging a bloody corpse. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 326. Li Erpang had a dark face all the way, and he had the arrogance to kill someone who stood in the way of someone else, and kill someone else if he stood in the way of someone else. Suzayasu turned around and covered her chest. With gentle eyes, she stared at the figure of Li Erpang from a distance, like the return of the king, with his head crumpled, and she was speechless for a long time. Her second fat one is the most handsome. My emotions were vented and I felt so comfortable, like a fat man who had eaten enough ice cream, that he suddenly shivered inexplicably. Why did it suddenly get cold? Hiss. The little fat man looked down at the bloody corpse and spat coldly, "Damn it, in broad daylight I dare to hit you with my car casually. Fat man, you didn't even have hair when I was speeding on various forums. Changchi. Bah. Who on the forum doesn't know that I, fat in BC, am the god of Akina mountain bikes? It's a heavy strike." Zhu Tianzong popped up again out of nowhere. He stared at the corpse in Li Erpang's hands for a long time, and then a trace of disdain showed on his cold face, as if to say that the little fat man did not care about the importance of his actions. "This is true love," Hu Sandeo said with a smile. "True love add 1. Oyu Lele, carrying a small skull bag, popped out from the corner. Suzayasu coughed twice, and after coughing out the blood in her lungs, her face turned slightly rosy. Listening to other people's teasing, she felt a little embarrassed and lowered her head shyly. "What the hell? You, when did you get here?" Li Erpang was dumbfounded as he looked at the pig teammates who had been hiding from each other at critical moments and then appeared one after another. His fingers were trembling slightly and his breathing was rapid. He pointed at Zhu Tianzong. "How dare you hide so fast just now? How dare you say that? Did I strike too hard? He almost killed me, fatty, and I'm still licking him. What the hell, am I mentally ill?" Zhu Tianzong hugged Sheng Chunro, whose eyes were wandering behind his back, and said with a straight face, "It's not time to draw the sword yet." Li Erpang was speechless for a moment. This child is hopeless. Shaking his fingers, Li Erpang pointed at Hu Sandeo and Oyu Lele again. "What kind of love, what kind of true love? I warn you, don't slander others, believe it or not, I will sue you and regret your slander. You regret your slander against me. Did you see that someone regrets slandering me? That character is pronounced defamation." Zhu Tianzong suddenly spoke and corrected. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Erpang suddenly shrank his neck and subconsciously glanced at Suzayasu. Seeing that Suzayasu's face turned pale, he did not dare to say anything more and quickly changed the topic. "By the way, you guys, when did you come?" Hu Sandeo smiled, "Just when Suzayasu hero saved the beauty and stood in front of you." Oyu Lele raised his hand. "I just heard that Fatty was furious because Sister Su was injured. In anger, he performed thrilling actions. He nimbly rushed into the police car and beat the villain to a pulp as revenge. The revenge of my sister's injury." At the end, Oyu Lele added, "True love." Li Erpang was so angry that he opened his mouth and spurted out a large mouthful of blood. "Fat are you okay?" When Suzayasu saw Li Erpang opening his mouth and vomiting blood, with concern on his face, he hurriedly came over. But after taking a few steps, Suzayasu's iron tower-like body began to sway slightly, as if it would fall down at any time. Seeing this scene, Oyulele, Zhu Tianzong, and Hu Sandao were all moved. This situation, true love. How could there be such a pure and sincere love in this world that has no time to live and die together? So touching. Oral's eyes were moist. I am so touched by you girls. Li Erpang was angry again. He casually threw Cao Anbang's body aside, stepped on it, and put his feet up so that he could stand more firmly. Hu Sandao smiled and said, "It's a big deal if a person dies. It's not good for you to do this." That's right. Li Erpang felt that what Hu Sandao said made sense, so he rubbed Cao Anbang's lower body a few more times. Pia is broken. Li Erpang finally felt comfortable, and then he moved his feet away and whispered, "It's important to die. In the next life, be more alert and don't mess with others." Suzayasu covered her chest and breathed slowly. Li Erpang's clothes were full of bullet holes and he looked very miserable. Both couples were injured. Hu Sandao closed his eyes and listened carefully. After a while, he opened his eyes and said, "It seems that the sirens have moved away from this area." Only then did Oyulele have time to claim credit. He raised the tablet and said, "Hey, this time, you should thank the awesome Olele." Seeing the puzzled expressions on other people's faces, he quickly explained the cause and effect in more detail, lest others didn't know how awesome he was. "I drove all the way back from the mountain Col, hacked into the surveillance system, and found that you were being hunted. So I took the opportunity, very simple and convenient, to hack into their command network, and used his authority to release a series of instructions were given. No, the policemen were all fooled and were running around the city." Who? Li Erpang didn't react for a moment. Oyulele pointed at the body that Li Erpang had stepped on again at some point, and said, "Him." Hu Sandao gave Oyulele a thumbs up, "Awesome. That must." When Li Erpang heard that he was temporarily safe, he breathed a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground, resting, breathing, and recovering his blood. At the same time, he stretched out his fingers and dug out a few bullets stuck in the fat. This action made the little fat man grimace in pain and almost opened his eyes. Hu Sandao looked serious and thought for a moment. He suddenly looked at Oyulele. "Aren't you not of age yet? How can you drive without a driver's license?" That's not important." At this time, Suzayasu tried her best to take a few steps, endured the pain, and sat down next to Li Erpang. Li Erpang wanted to avoid it. But when Li Erpang remembered that Suzayasu suddenly appeared in front of him in the posture of a god descending to earth, he lowered his head again and remained silent. Humans are always soft-hearted animals. They say they don't want it, but in action, it's always a bit contrary to their wishes. There was no way. Li Erpang felt that if he pushed Suzayasu away at this time, he would be suspected of being a scumbag. In order not to be misunderstood as a person like Li Changa, he could only swallow his bitterness silently. Although Li Er was so fat that he killed a policeman. But he wasn't too worried. Putting aside the fact that they were the ones who made the first move, given Li Erpang's background, this was really nothing. What's more, he is a man with a special status, he is very awesome. After coming back to his senses, Li Erpang said in a low voice, "Then what should we do now?" Zhu Tianzong said indifferently, "Kill him back." A member of his dignified Zhu family was chased for more than 10 streets by a small city policeman. How could he bear this tone? "I can't bear it." Besides, he is also a swordsman. A super swordsman who is about to realize the swordless realm. Hu Sandao took out the scalpel. The weirdness of this incident was beyond imagination. It's as if everyone has been brainwashed. This method is somewhat similar to Hu Sandao's skill, but the effect is more domineering. Who is hiding behind the scenes and planning all this? This Dawn sect is not simple. If this religion cannot be uprooted and the Dawn sect is allowed to hide after this incident, the Dragon Kingdom is so big that it will not be easy to dig out the Dawn sect again. Hu Sandao thought deeper. The headache now was not just how to deal with the follow-up of Shugwang's section, there is also the chaos caused by this incident in Ity City. If it is not handled well, public opinion will ferment, and it is very likely that it will eventually get out of hand and evolve into a major abnormality that will cause social unrest. No one here can take the blame for this matter. Sooner or later, we have to wait for the people with decision-making power to come down and arrange the follow-up matters. Hey, wait. Li Erpang, who was resting to catch his breath and quietly regain his blood, suddenly remembered something. His expression was stunned, and he couldn't help but ask, "Isn't that kid working with you? Didn't you agree to raid the base camp of these idiots? Why are you the only one sneaking back? Where are the others? Yes. What about the Yilin people?" After listening to Li Erpang's words, everyone remembered that there was someone like Yilin. I almost forgot about him. Isn't it too insignificant? And just when everyone had been struggling for most of the night, they finally remembered that there was a number one person like Yilin in their small team. The vibrations of the death mark were felt on different parts of each person one after another. Li Erpang lowered his head first. View information. Zhu Tianzong, Ou Lele, and Hu Sandao realized that someone was sending them messages. After a few seconds, everyone raised their heads with different expressions. Almost at the same time, he said, "Is there a big boss coming?" Li Erpang, what do you mean? Hu Sandao smiled, maybe I provoke someone again, right? Zhu Tianzong, humph. Olele took another strawberry-flavored lollipop out of her school bag and licked it happily. What does it have to do with us? Suzayasu's face changed slightly. Although he didn't know Yilin very well, maybe he didn't know her well enough. But she had a feeling. Since Yilin sent a message to everyone with such a big fanfare, something big must have happened. Thinking of this, she gritted her teeth, stood up hard, and crushed a card with her backhand. After the light dissipated, a strange chain appeared in Suzayasu's hand. At the front of the chain was a delicate and small ring, a cross-shaped decoration, linked to the ring through a small chain with no visible material. Suzayasu put the materialized prop into Ou Lele's hand and whispered, "Give me and Erpang some treatment." Oral subconsciously took over the avant-garde ring chain. When he saw the attributes clearly, his little hand trembled in fright and he almost lost his grip. Revival cross-chain? Damn it, this item is awesome. Wait, Sister Su, why don't you use it yourself? Suzayasu lowered her head and said, I can't wear this ring. After a while, Suzayasu glanced at the little fat man at his feet, and added, he can't wear it either. Ou Lele twisted the ring between her fingers and looked at it carefully. Indeed. None of them can put it on. But aren't you afraid that I'll steal it? It's such an excellent prop. Well, it's okay, you don't dare. Suzayasu looked calm and clenched her fists. Olele. Ou Lele put on the ring and activated the prop. The cross at the end of the ring floated up out of thin air, emitting a soft white light. When it fell on Suzayasu's body, the collapsed bones in her chest made a snapping sound. Suzayasu's complexion also quickly returned to rosy at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ou Lele followed suit and used Suzayasu's healing props to cure Li Erpang's injuries. Although Li Erpang was reluctant and owed Sister Su a favor, he still didn't dare to talk nonsense and endured it silently. There's only one time left. Ou Lele reluctantly returned the revival cross-chain that only had one use left to Suzayasu. Indeed, he did not dare to take it away. Will be beaten to death. The kind that is beaten to death. No one noticed that while Oral was treating the couple's injuries, Hu Sandao kept his head lowered and his fingers were shaking involuntarily. When Suzayasu turned the precious life-saving props back into cards and put them away, Hu Sandao smiled bitterly. Now, we are all in big trouble. Everyone. Yilin's whole body was pressed against Dyer's seat by the hunting wind, making it difficult to move. The cold wind cuts like a knife. But fortunately he has put on Krypton gold equipment. Fortunately, his hat has the property of not falling off. Unless his head falls off, it will never fall off. In this case, perfect for drag racing. After activating the spray mode, the Night Dyer was like a black lightning in the night, biting behind the giant beast at a distance of nearly 100 meters. Yilin didn't dare to get too close. At present, the giant beast didn't seem to notice the insignificant little tail following its butt. If discovered, Yilin was not sure whether the giant beast would turn around and bite back. This giant beast is definitely not something that can descend into the real world at this stage. If Yilin really breaks through the first level of spiritual lock, she can try to defeat the boss alone. But in the current situation, it is safer to form a group. In Yilin's opinion, in Itai City, there are double tanks, DPS, and support, which is a perfect lineup for teaming up to fight the boss. But with this fuel consumption, it is very likely that we will not be able to survive in Itai City. And why did it go straight to Itai City? The rotting body, there is a large population in Itai City, and it is hungry. Yilin was deep in thought, lowering his head from time to time to check the dashboard. Although Night Dyer is now in an extremely excited state, breathing fire and roaring. But Yilin knew very well that under this water-like fuel consumption, the Night Dyer would not be able to last at all, and it would not be long before it would become weak and unable to become a fighting force. It's a pity that I didn't bring fuel with me. This was a mistake. I didn't expect that the injection mode would also be used in the real world. Yilin reflected secretly. It seems that in the future, I will have to keep a few bottles of high-quality wine in the storage space. No matter what happens, go to the supermarket and buy a few boxes of cheap canned beer for emergencies. But it was too late to regret now. Yilin could only think quickly. While chasing the giant beast in the sky, she checked the storage space to see if there were any items that could replace fuel. Night Dyer is no ordinary car. But it's not a mount in the usual sense. After being strengthened by the Apocalypse module, Night Dyer is equivalent to a half-machine, half-biological existence. Its structure should be reorganized by some kind of rules. In other words, Night Dyer is not picky about food. Since you can breathe out fire when you drink alcohol, it shouldn't be bad if you drink something else, right? Yilin rummaged around in the storage space for a long time. Although he now had a lot of messy props, in the true sense, those that had something to do with fuel. With a thought in her mind, Yilin resisted the pressure of the wind, floated one hand in the air, took out a card, and quickly crushed it. The cards were shattered into pieces, turned into bits of light, and reorganized in Yilin's hands. A bottle of crystal clear liquid like ruby appeared in Yilin's hand. Styx water. Seeing that Nightmare's satiety was about to drop to its lowest level, Yilin hesitated for a few seconds and could only open the Nightmare's fuel tank cap and pour the Styx water into it. Originally, the Styx water should be a raw material that can be used for forging. It is used as fuel to refuel the Night Dyer. I don't know if it is considered a waste. While complaining, the scarlet Styx water pressed against the opening of the fuel tank cap and poured into Nightmare's body. Call out. Ah. Oh. Suddenly. After Yilin poured the liquid into Nightmare's body, the mount underneath him couldn't help but make a strange cry. Oh, Master, what did you give me to drink? I feel drunk. Yilin asked tentatively. Rumble, rumble. Suddenly, the Night Dyer began to shake violently. Very much like convulsions. No. On the dashboard, a scarlet light suddenly lit up, stinging Yilin's eyes in the dark night. Oh shit. I feel so powerful. Oh. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I, Night Dyer, am going. Ah. Yilin's expression changed slightly. He felt that there was something wrong with the nightmare under his butt. Rather than being drunk so much, it's more like having an epileptic seizure. In mid-air, the night dire trembled violently, moving and beating again and again, which was extremely sensational. It was so shocking that Yilin could hardly hold the bottle. But when Yilin poured some water, but it was definitely not full, and then checked Nightmare's status bar, she was surprised to find Night Dire's satiety level is actually full. Hiccup. Sit tight, my master. After having had enough to drink, Night Dire spoke in a weird tone, pretending to be serious while having an epileptic fit. Now, the aloof gentleman will take the master to the stars and the sea, to the end of the starry sky and the other side of life. Ah, wait. I am your sister on the other side. Yilin didn't have time to say the word ah. But in an instant, Night Dire's entire body, including the dashboard, had a frightening red glow coming out of every mechanical connection gap. After Nightmare left, Yilin felt a feeling of soaring clouds and mist. The scenery in front of her suddenly changed. A terrifying wind pressure pressed Yilin to her seat, making it almost impossible to move. Nightmare really had a convulsion. Night Dire was like a red lightning bolt, swishing to its maximum speed. Boom! Yilin was pressed against Nightmare, almost lying flat on her back, very embarrassed. But at this moment, there was a sudden explosion next to Yilin's face. Yilin's eyes widened. The pointer representing the speed on the Dire's dashboard suddenly exploded, sending out a sizzling red smoke. The speed is off the charts. In just a split second, Yilin didn't have time to react. Night Dire speeded directly in the air, flew past the giant beast, and rushed in front of the giant beast. Li hiss hiss dash. Originally, the giant beast seemed to be flying wildly towards a certain destination, but when the Night Dire drove at speed, the giant beast finally discovered the existence of this little ant, and screamed loudly from the huge beast's mouth. With a flutter of its wings, it sped up and chased after Night Dire. In mid-air, Yilin squinted her eyes and took a quick glance. When passing by the giant beast, he could barely see the strange posture of the giant beast. The giant beast is about 15 meters long, with its wings fully extended and at least 20 meters wide. Compared with the human body, it is not an exaggeration to call it a giant beast. The giant beast has a head that looks like a lion, 4 legs and 2 wings under its body. What Yilin found most strange was that behind the giant beast's butt, on each tail, there was actually a snake head. The snake's pupils were glowing scarlet, its fangs were bared, and it was swinging seductively in the air. It was very strange. Se. A lion's head, a sheep's body, bird's wings, and a snake's tail. Could this be a chimera? It's a strange beast from mythology, the chimera. There are actually many versions of the chimera's form. Some versions have a lion's head, a sheep's body, bird's wings, and a snake's tail. Some versions are of a two-headed dragon, one spitting ice and the other spitting fire, a combination of ice and fire. Some versions are even more outrageous, saying that the upper body is that of a voluptuous beauty, the lower body is that of a four-legged horse, and there are countless tentacles growing from the back of the buttocks. Some people have curiously speculated in the past that if the chimera, whose upper body is a beauty and the lower body is a centaur, will have a bulging belly once she becomes pregnant. In short, although the various versions of the chimera in mythology have different tastes, they have one thing in common. That is, a polygenic chimeric beast. The same alien beast possesses the genes of different creatures and can be called a chimera. In real society, some people have also studied the chimera phenomenon under this topic. Various information about chimera flashed through Yilin's mind, but her expression became more serious. The followers of Dawn sect actually summoned the chimera from mythology into the real world by sacrificing the lives of hundreds of people. This is outrageous. One man and one beast chased each other in the air. The chimera flapped its wings quickly, biting tightly behind the night dyer, and the speed was incredibly fast. You know, in Styx Junior High School, Yilin relied on night dyer's jet mode to drift in the air. No one could chase him, and he was incomparable. He was called the king of Styx cars. Unexpectedly, this chimera, which seemed to be in poor condition, could barely keep up with the speed of night dyer. Today's night dyer is still burning Styx water and has entered the explosive mode. One can imagine how fast this chimera beast is. Although chimera's condition is not right. The neighing sound was almost crazy. The chimera's body rotted away. But it still caught up, biting tightly behind the night dyer's ass. The cold rain patted Yilin's mask randomly. Yilin no longer needs to think about the chimera's destination. Because it is obvious that chimera has now regarded night dyer as a hunting target. Night dyer is its prey. Who made the night dyer glow red all over and look as angry as the brightest star in the night sky? If not, who will you chase? This situation is not necessarily a bad thing. At least it can turn passivity into initiative. Under the mask, Yilin had an expressionless face and floated one hand in the air. At the same time, she quickly opened the communication panel and contacted her friends in Itai City. "Oh Lele, the plan has changed. Zhao Yulong should have informed you that there is a big guy chasing behind my butt. If I am not wrong in my estimation, I will be able to land in Litai City in about 10 minutes. It may be faster, use your fastest speed to clear an area and evacuate the crowd. Hu Sandeo, cooperate with Lele to find an open place. Once the place becomes available, all of you, rush over as quickly as possible. Little fat man, it's time for you to do something big. Warm up quickly. It's very likely that you will have to use all your fat. Sister Su, I will try my best to drag you into marriage. Now there is only one thing you have to do, keep an eye on your husband and don't let him escape. Wang Tiandi. You should remember the taste of Li Erpang, the fattest and most obscene one. Rush to him as quickly as possible and reward you with top-notch royal dog food for a month. Zhu Tianzong, the time has come for you to use your sword. Follow Lele closely, this opponent may allow you to understand the highest realm of sword. After finishing the lies one by one, no, after finishing the arrangements one by one, Yilin didn't care about waiting for their replies and buried her head in mid-air while hanging the chimera behind her. Once it catches up, the consequences will be disastrous. Rotten flesh and blood were constantly peeling off the chimera's body, scattering on the ground like a rain of blood. Wherever the chimera passed, the ground smoked from time to time. This night, countless people inadvertently raised their heads and saw such a strange sight in the night sky. A bright red meteor streaked across the sky. Behind the meteor, a strange giant beast cast a terrifying huge shadow above the clouds, covering the clouds and the moon. Look! Shooting stars! Shooting stars! What's that at the back? A monster? Honey, come out and see the monsters. Am I really dreaming? Is this a movie? Return of the Monster? Could that meteor be Captain Red or something? The citizens of Itai City who saw the scene started talking a lot. Those with good eyesight and quick hands quickly took photos, photoshopped, uploaded, and liked while this wonderful scene was still there. They connected it 4 times with just one click. They were very skillful. A few minutes later. Itai City. A video caused an uproar. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 327. Yilin had no time to care about how much shock tonight's incident would bring to the world. This can be said to be the first time that part of the truth about this world is truly revealed to ordinary people. But does this require Yilin to have a headache? Unnecessary. This is a headache for Zhao Yulong and Mo Rendi. What does it have to do with Yilin? He is just an ordinary member of the special team who does not receive a salary. The kind who can go on strike, resign, or give up their responsibilities at any time. The Chimera behind her didn't know whether she saw Yilin and Nightmare as lifelong enemies, or as delicious food. The screams behind him came one after another, and Yilin's ears were shocked until they bled and then healed. It was very scary. Gradually, Yilin also noticed that the Chimera hanging behind her was becoming more and more abnormal. Although he couldn't understand what the Chimera beast was shouting, Yilin felt that the Chimera was conveying a vague emotion of pain. Pain. Why is it painful? Yilin thought of the rotting flesh and blood on the Chimera. Is there something wrong with the summoning process? Or is it some other reason? Could this be related to its fight against Night Dire? It was not difficult for Yilin to find out that Chimera targeted Night Dire after filling Styx water into Night Dire's fuel tank. Although it may also be because the Night Dire at this moment is too dazzling and shining, which hurts the Chimera's eyes. But Yilin always felt that things would not be that simple. There must be a reason for the Chimera to chase the Night Dire. Red meteors streak across the sky. Yilin's eyes narrowed. In less than 10 minutes, he had flown out of the mountain col and approached the bustling urban area. In the distance, the lights are bright, and the neon lights of various colors are very bright at night. From a distance, it looks like a gorgeous ocean of 7 colors. But the Chimeras still chase the red Night Dire and refuse to let go. Itai City is right in front of you. If Oulele cannot arrange a location to kill the boss, the scope of the disaster will be difficult to estimate if it lands in the city. Although Night Dire seems to have taken some medicine and is in a convulsive state, the water in the Styx River is limited after all, and I can't fly down endlessly. We can't expect this Chimera that is not in the right condition to be consumed in the air. If I land in an inaccessible place, I will be faced with the situation of single-handedly challenging this Chimera. This will be too dangerous. Various thoughts raced through Yilin's mind. Right now. Oral's contact came belatedly. Based on the Chimera's cry, Yilin estimated that the distance between the Chimera and the Night Dire was still within a safe distance. So Yilin quickly opened Oral's message. Oulele, in the northwest of Litai City, outside the Third Ring Road, there is a school district housing under construction. At this time, there is no one there. Yilin, that's it? Oulele, but what if the whole thing breaks? I can't afford to pay for housing in this large school district. Yilin, how long does it take to buy a house in this school district? Oral, surprise. Do you have money? Yilin, no, let Zhao Yulong be responsible. Oral, got it? Wait, who takes the blame? Yilin, if you don't take action quickly, you will be blamed for this. Trust me. Oulele, we have 3 minutes to reach the battlefield. Plus, I'm in hiding. Yilin, it's really yours. Now please hurry up and cut off the power supply system around the unfinished building. Oulele, why is it so rotten and unfinished? Yilin, it will be finished soon. Oral. Oulele ended the call speechlessly. He seemed to be aware of the anxiety in Yilin's tone. Although he didn't dare to imagine who would be able to take the blame later, but now was definitely not the time to consider who would take the blame. He seemed to feel a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. According to Zhao Yulong, if this monster is really so scary, once the monster falls in the bustling city center, the city will be devastated and blood will flow like a river. Oral, the hero. Oulele walked to the street, next to the exposed line, and decisively activated his ability. His spirit quickly followed the route and invaded every corner around him. In the real world, his abilities and effects would be terrifying. When he was able to reach the first level, he was specially recruited into the special team, and he also received the title of senior team member, which was closely related to his special abilities. Ability, activate. Eulalie's hair stood on end, as if being electrified. At the same time, in front of Yilin's eyes, the dazzling neon lights and city lights began to extinguish in circles, centered on a certain location. Darkness invades silently and spreads quietly. In the blink of an eye, the place where Orl activated his ability was completely plunged into darkness. There will be a battlefield. Without navigation, the dark area in the northwest corner of Itai City is the best coordinate. Go, go, go. Yilin didn't have time to hesitate. After Orl took action, he turned the front of the car directly. The red meteor made a small turn in the sky, dragging long red fireworks, and quickly flew towards the unfinished building area where the power was outage. It looks like a meteor about to fall to the earth. At the same time, ground. After Eulalie finished all this, his erected hair returned to the shape of a mushroom head. Eulalie also looked pale, sweating on her forehead, her feet went weak, and she fell on the roadside. Although he has special abilities, he only needs a network. But after all, he is only a first-level apostle, and his spiritual power is not high. This movement could be described as an extraordinary display, draining all his spiritual energy. When his spiritual power was exhausted, Eulalie closed his eyes and raised the corners of his mouth, showing his evil charm and madness. Eulalie, awesome. After boasting, Eulalie finally couldn't hold on, his eyes rolled up, and he fell into a coma at the speed of light. On the highway, Li Erpang snatched a police car from some unlucky guy and started racing like crazy. Bang bang bang. The surrounding circuits, street lights, neon advertising lights on the building, and lights in the house all emitted a dazzling spark of electricity at almost the same time and then went out completely. In front of him, behind him, and in the sky, darkness fell one after another. This scene made Li Erpang know that Eulalie had really succeeded. That boy's abilities are a bit slippery. Li Erpang sighed, stepped on the accelerator and turned on the car lights. With an overwhelming roar, black smoke came out of the exhaust pipe of the car that Li Erpang had snatched temporarily, and the car accelerated into the darkness. Li Erpang did want to run away originally. But there was no time. I don't know why, but when he was about to run away, Sister Su anticipated it, held his head, and led him to steal a car. How careless! Li Erpang was crying silently. When things came to a close, he saw that everyone else had solemn expressions, and he was too embarrassed to say that he wanted to back down. It feels very shameful. Especially embarrassing in front of Zhu Tianzong. After all, the Li family and the Zhu family are both descendants of emperors from the Z5 Council. If Li Erpang is compared to Zhu Tianzong in this matter, doesn't it mean that the Li family is being compared to the Zhu family? If this incident reaches the ears of the old man and the old mother, wouldn't it give them another reason to force marriage? No. Don't want. Can't. How can I, Erpang Li, give in? Li Erpang is rising. Isn't it just a boss fight? It's not like I haven't fought before in the trial. Moreover, the configuration here is very complete. DPS, support, double tanks, plus Yilin's insidious mental side, this is an excellent configuration for fighting boss. I, Li Erpang, have never been afraid of anyone. Li Erpang patted his belly. The belly was full of fat, which added a lot of confidence to the little fat man. Worst case, use another big move. A month later, I was able to eat another fat man. There were 5 people sitting in the car. Li Erpang, Suziasu, Zhu Tianzong, Hu Sandao, Sheng Chunro. It's obviously a 5-seater car, so it's just right. But when Li Erpang stepped on the accelerator, he always had the illusion of being overloaded and overweight. The little fat man had questioned at first why he had brought a girl like Sheng Chunro with him at this time. Zhu Tianzong just replied coldly, "This woman cannot die. How dare you still think about heroes saving beauties at this time?" If Suzayasu hadn't been watching from the side, Li Erpang would have quarreled with Zhu Tianzong long ago. What is that? Hu Sandao, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stuck his head out of the car window with a look of surprise on his face. Li Erpang was originally concentrating on driving towards the unfinished building Ou Lele mentioned. At this time, after hearing what Hu Sandao said, he also raised his head. For a moment, I was stunned. In the sky, a meteor trailing long red flames, very much like the scene of the satellite falling 10 years ago, quickly passed through the sky and was flying straight in this direction from a distance. Meteorite. Damn it, isn't it? Li Erpang was almost frightened and stepped on the brakes. But Hu Sandao suddenly laughed. It's him. Who? Li Erpang didn't react for a moment and was confused. Urine. What the hell? When the little fat man heard this, his eyes widened instantly. In the sky, Yilin also saw the only light on the speeding car on the dark road. Arrive. Yilin piloted the nightmare, flying straight down on a parallel trajectory, rushing towards the ground like a falling meteor. And the chimera hanging behind Dyer's movements was terrifyingly agile. When Yilin suddenly turned sharply, the chimera beast reacted in the blink of an eye. With a sharp whistle, his wings trembled, strong winds arose, and the rain falling from the sky was picked up by the strong winds, forming a huge cyclone beside Chimera. After using the vibration of its wings to slow down the castration, the Chimera also made a sharp turn in mid-air and swooped down from a high altitude. Yulin and Chimera are getting closer and closer to the ground. 300 meters. 200 meters. 100 meters. 50 meters. Beneath him, the unfinished high-rise building and its exposed steel bars reflected a blood-like light under the red light emitted by the nightmare. On the ground, Li Erpang and others finally saw the true face of the gorgeous red meteor. After everyone stayed in the car for a while, Li Erpang was the first to react. However, the fat man is uneducated and can travel the world with just one word. Holy shit! That kid, Ju, is actually driving a motorcycle. How can a motorcycle fly? This is unscientific. Yilin, who was driving the nightmare, smiled slightly in the car. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the terrifying figure above his head. Let the world feel pain from now on. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 328. At the moment when Disaster Haunted was activated, the majestic Chimera, which was dancing in the air, suddenly stopped screaming. In the shocked eyes of the little fat man and others, the unique monster in the sky suddenly swung, its wings stiffened, and fell vertically from the sky. Wow, that monster is so big. Li Erpang stepped on the accelerator, stared blankly at the Chimera not far away, getting closer and closer, and subconsciously said something. Brake. Hu Sandao's expression changed slightly. He held the door handle tightly and loudly reminded Li Erpang to step on the brakes. But the speed of the Chimera's free fall was too fast. Li Erpang's reaction was a little slower, and Chech rushed straight towards the Chimera. If there were no accidents, if Li Erpang could not apply the brakes in time, the 5 people in the car would turn into tragic human bombs and collide with the Chimera by chance. It can be called the textbook version of die before the start of the attack. Humph, sit still. Zhu Tianzong, who was sitting in the back seat of the car and had been showing off with a cold face, suddenly opened his eyes. Ah, this? Etc. Wait. Don't. Danger. The moment Zhu Tianzong spoke out, everyone else all imagined Zhu Tianzong's next move. Unsheath. Clang. In the narrow carriage, Zhu Tianzong raised his right hand, and he actually completed the action of drawing the sword in the storage space. When he raised his hand, a dazzling white light bloomed in the car and poured out mercilessly from the roof. The sword is out, the sword is out, the sword is out. The man who silently understood that no sword, more sword, no matter who has the sword, No sword finally drew his sword. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the car driven by Li Erpang, without slowing down, crashed into the monster that was about to fall to the ground. Yilin had already landed safely. Before the Chimera landed, he turned around gracefully on the ground and turned the front of the car. The angry night dire, like the tail of Halley's comet, swooped far along the ground and past the car where Li Erpang and others were sitting. Boom! The fire is soaring into the sky. In fact, the moment Zhu Tianzong drew his sword, Suzayasu beside him also reacted. He stretched out his hands suddenly, and with the huge force of the iron tower, he followed Zhu Tianzong's splitting marks in mid-air and tore a big hole in the roof of the car. The police car, like a cannonball, hit the Chimera hard. In an instant, when Chimera fell to the ground, the whole ground seemed to be slapped hard and trembled. The steel bars of the surrounding unfinished buildings were swinging at the same time, as if they would collapse at any time. The fire caused by the explosion of the police car and the strong wind brought by the Chimera when it landed merged together and actually triggered a series of terrifying explosion cyclones, completely blowing away everything around them without reservation. "Cao, cao, cao, you bastard, didn't I ask you to wait for a while?" On the other side, Li Erpang rolled out of the darkness while cursing. If he hadn't reacted quickly and jumped out of the car at the critical moment, he would have been half cold by now. The little fat man squinted his eyes deeply, and when he appeared, he quickly checked his surroundings. After all, he was used to it. A second later, Li Erpang locked onto the terrifying figure in the firelight. A few more seconds. Suzayasu, Husandao, and Zhu Tianzong, who was carrying Sheng Chunro on his back, walked out from all directions. It seemed that they all had a lot of dust on their bodies. It seemed that although they were a little embarrassed when they escaped from the car, they were not seriously injured. This wave of output is good. Rumble. After racing all the way out of the mountain Col, Night Dire's arrogance had also restrained a lot. It was finally not so convulsive and was within Yilin's control. "You kid, where did you get this car? Do you want to sell it?" Li Erpang looked at the nightmare under Yilin's ass, and envious saliva flowed from the corners of his mouth. "This look, this special effects, this cool style, it's so domineering. This is the most suitable car for a fat man. Where is it produced? Mass production? Is it expensive? The point is, this car can actually fly. So awesome." Yilin kindly reminded, "Actually, you have seen it before. Ah. That day, you and Sister Su stayed in the basement of Li Changa's villa for 1 hour. Time was running out. Yilin used short words to stimulate Li Erpang's memory. Li Erpang stood still for 3 seconds. 3 full seconds. 3 seconds without moisture. The memory of that day and that hour was like a tide, like a rushing river, and like a revolving lantern, quickly recollecting in Li Erpang's mind. He remembered. That black mecha. Is that a car? I'm sorry. Just when the little fat man was feeling sad, happy, and all kinds of complicated emotions were intertwined, and he was about to explode, Husandao's eyes narrowed, and he gently pinched the scalpel between his 3-inch fingers and said, "Be careful, it's not over yet." And in an instant, including Husandao, except for Yilin, everyone's expressions changed. After standing in front of Chimera, they all received prompts for a mandatory real-life mission. Among the few people, not everyone is like Yilin, who has enough DP to bear the serious punishment of mission failure. In the mandatory real-life mission mode, if you are unable to kill the monster in front of you in the end, even if you escape to the ends of the earth, it will eventually be wiped out because the DP will be deducted. The situation before me is different from the Zhanghuishun incident in Hading City. During the Zhanghuishun incident, for some reason, a large number of apostles flooded into Hading City. Even if they couldn't kill Zhanghuishun, they could still escape the punishment for mission failure by hunting other apostles and harvesting DP. Surrounded by deserted school district buildings, this dark area was forcibly created by Oral. Looking around, there were no other apostles except the 5 of them. You can only go up. Zhu Tianzong had no expression on his face. He carried Sheng Chunro on his back and looked around to see if he could find a suitable place to place Sheng Chunro. Li Erpang looked sad and cried out in his heart. He was even thinking that he, Erpang Li, would definitely go around wherever Yilin was around in the future. He said it. Even after Jesus came, he couldn't change it. Boom, boom, boom. After reading the task prompt, Suzayasu was silent for a few seconds, then she strode forward like a dragon and a tiger, stepping hard on the ground, blocking everyone with her steel body. She has a clear conscience. She, here, will become a mountain that no one can shake. As Suzayasu started to act, Li Erpang also quickly straightened his back. He held his breath and reluctantly looked away from Yilin's car. Now is not the time to be envious. The boss is right in front of you. Li Erpang did not dare to despise this mandatory practical task. Li hiss dash. Suddenly, the shrill scream made everyone's eardrums buzz, and they all covered their ears in unison, gritting their teeth to bear the terrible roar. Chimera, it's moving. Yilin's disaster haunted, although its effect is overbearing and can control the field in various ways, it has a time limit after all. While the skill lasted, the others quickly arranged their moods and formations, preparing to form a group to completely push away this weird creature that appeared in the real world. Only now did they truly realize how terrifying this monster brought by Yilin was. Even a mere scream can make everyone's eardrums hurt. How terrifying it would be if it exploded. In the center of the dazzling fire, the biting wind whipped up, and the burning wreckage of the police car was suddenly blasted out. Careful! Afraid that others wouldn't hear, Yilin shouted loudly, stepped on Nightmare's butt, jumped up, and flew high. While turning over, Yilin did not hesitate and activated following like a shadow, completely erasing her sense of existence and blending into the night without any sense of disobedience. Yilin was chased by the Chimera. Although it was not completely clear what the monster possessed, the speed, size, and weight alone showed that this boss was not comparable to ordinary monsters. I'm afraid I can't hide this strength. Yilin has always been unwilling to expose all his strength in front of others. After all, he wears the Apocalypse Night module and has skills that are completely different from other apostles. Since he became an apostle, driven by module bonuses and high clearance evaluations, his attributes have grown to a point that is insurmountable for apostles of the same level. If others knew that his attributes had increased so quickly, you might be jealous of others. But the current situation did not allow Yilin to think too much. Yilin took a quick look at the remaining spiritual power and already had some calculations in her mind. Bang bang bang. The flaming wreckage of the police car, played with by the Chimera, looked like a small ignited rubber ball in a circus. When Chimera flaps its wings, it can easily lift about a ton of weight. One can imagine what the consequences would be if those wings hit a person. The twin tanks can probably handle it, but Yilin's body, it's hard to say. Everyone evaded. After all, none of the people present were rookies. Except for Zhu Tianzong's scruples because he was carrying Sheng Chunro on his back, Hu Sandao, Li Erpang, and Suzayasu quickly found their place in the chaos. Yilin rolled up his cloak suddenly, covering his figure, almost blending into the night. While he was alert to the movements of the Chimera, he reminded others. Don't let it fly. Who doesn't know? Li Erpang roared and saw that Suzayasu had rushed forward. As a proper power apostle, he did not dare to hide behind others. He rolled on the spot and came to Suzayasu's side, standing with Suzayasu. Somehow, Suzayasu's figure blocking his face with her spacious back flashed through Li Erpang's mind. A strange emotion emerged in the little fat man's heart. Hurry! What a fart! Li Erpang quickly suppressed the horrible thoughts that had just emerged in his mind. Fight the boss. Focus on beating the boss. After putting aside his distracting thoughts, Li Erpang was like a round cannonball, stomping towards the Chimera. As he started to take action, Fatty Li Er yelled, "Sister Su and I are in front with our tanks, you guys need to attack quickly and don't paddle. Otherwise, if I die, I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost." Suzayasu smiled slightly. Double tanks, out of the cage. Shadow kill. The moment Li Erpang and Suzayasu's tanks rushed out, Yilin no longer held back. In the blink of an eye, without anyone noticing, the figure twisted and turned into a faint shadow, meandering on the ground. In a few breaths, and came to Chimera's side. The Chimera's lion-like head suddenly lifted up under the crowd. The moment the fire went out and the strong wind subsided, everyone could truly see the monster's form. A lion's head, a sheep's body, wings, a snake's tail, and a pair of beast eyes that seemed to be full of resentment, almost standing in a linear shape. Those pair of vertical pupils, in the dark night, were like two crystal clear light bulbs, emitting a faint blue light. And right now, a very strong ominous omen surged into Yilin's heart. Not good. Chimera's eyes. Yilin suddenly remembered the myth and legend about Chimera in a certain version. If you look into Chimera's eyes, you will be. In the flash of lightning, Yilin had arrived at the edge of Chimera's wings, and the thin shadow on the ground twisted and reshaped into Yilin's shape. Silently, Yilin appeared in the blind spot of Chimera's sight, and stabbed Chimera's right wing lightly like a ghostly knife. This was obviously a perfect assassination. An assassination that no one, or monster, noticed. But the moment Yilin used the knife, she loudly reminded everyone. Don't look it in the eyes. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 329. Late. Li Erpang's eyesight was not good and he did not meet the beast's eyes. When the others decided to form a group to fight the boss, they had already found their respective positions. Hu Sandao and Zhu Tianzong were accustomed to walking around Chimera's side and behind like Yilin. Suzayasu, who was the only one who planned to carry the Chimera alone, was the first to bear the brunt, and happened to look into the Chimera's eyes that were as dazzling as light bulbs. Just for a moment, Suzayasu's expression changed. She looked down and found that her legs seemed to be filled with lead weights and she could not move at all. This isn't right. With Suzayasu's strength attributes and size, she can move freely even if she is carrying a lead weight. But at this moment, her legs couldn't move at all. When she looked down, Suzayasu was surprised to find that her legs, starting from the soles of her feet, had a dark color that quickly spread to her upper body and turned into the material of stone. This is petrified. Anyone who looks at a chimera will be petrified by it. In just a few seconds, Suzayasu had made a decision. She shook her right hand and quickly threw a small card in the direction of Yilin. Originally, after Yilin activated following like a shadow, even teammates found it difficult to find Yilin's location. But Yilin's reminder was equivalent to breaking the effect of following like a shadow and exposing her position. After Yilin issued a warning, she stabbed the chimera's wings with the blood jasmine in her hand. The penetration effect activates. Although during this period, Yilin has been using Shadow Kill as a stealth skill. But he has not forgotten that Shadow Kill, which was upgraded with a lot of chaos points, is a super skill that combines stealth, acceleration, and assassination. The moment Yilin attacked, he felt a cold aura that appeared from nowhere and spread quietly along his arms, wrists, and palms, reaching the short sword. Laugh. Hiss dash. In the blink of an eye, Yilin's knife stabbed out, as if the blood jasmine was magnified countless times, and forced a blood hole as big as a human head in the chimera's wings. The huge wings were instantly penetrated by the strange power of the skill, even the bones were exposed, and smelly blood spurted out. The sudden injury caused the vigorous chimera's whole body to tremble violently. The snake-shaped tails behind the buttocks and all the snake heads looked towards Yilin. Those terrifying snake pupils were filled with pain, confusion, anger, resentment, and other emotions. But Yilin's attack was not over yet. After activating the penetration effect of Shadow Kill to pierce the chimera's wings, Yilin's expression became condensed, and without sheathing the sword, she successively activated the form change skill of the enchanted weapon. The chimera's lion's head and snake's tail screamed at the same time, and the snake's head on the tail turned around at the same time and bit Yilin fiercely. Under each snake's head, the slender fangs dripped with fishy liquid, glowing dimly, and chose to bite people. Everything happened in a flash of lightning. Chimera moved too fast and reacted very quickly. After the wings were pierced, as if it was a conditioned reflex, the chimera counterattacked and killed Yilin. The blood jasmine in Yilin's hand twisted and reorganized at lightning speed. In the astonished eyes of others, a short dagger turned into a broad-blade giant sword more than 1 meter long. Form change. Bai Xiaoi. Killing skill. Yilin, holding a giant sword, seemed to transform from an assassin hiding in the dark to a berserker at this moment. In the blink of an eye, Yilin completed the process of shape change and insight into weaknesses. The changes in skills, strengthening, and possessed weapons were connected like clouds and flowing water. With one move of the knife, the bloody giant sword followed the penetrated blood hole and suddenly a bloody wound appeared on the chimera's wing. Tear. At the moment when Chimera's wings were torn apart, Chimera's huge body suddenly twisted, looking extremely painful, and let out an even more miserable roar. All this happened too quickly and too suddenly. Chimera just raised her eyes. Suzaya's half-body turned into stone. Yilin suddenly exploded and tore off one of the Chimera's wings. Hu Sandao had just arrived at Chimera's anus before he had time to make a move. Zhu Tianzong just found a corner and put down Sheng Chunro, but he didn't have time to use his second sword. Everything, is too fast. Caught people off guard. After Yilin split the Chimera's wings with a knife, her body became strangely stiff in mid-air. The Chimera was in pain, and its hatred value was instantly full. After petrifying Suzayasu, it turned its lion head and looked at Yilin with its cold and shiny beast eyes. At the same time, the snake's tail also attacked quietly, drowning Yilin's figure in an instant. Hiss dash. Several huge snake heads seemed to be tearing Yilin into pieces of flesh, biting towards Yilin crazily. Li Erpang stayed in place for another 2 seconds. In this fierce battle, 2 seconds of daze is enough to kill someone several times. But Li Erpang was still stunned. At this moment, Suzayasu threw the resurrection cross-chain card, which had only the last number of uses left, to Yilin, and everything from her neck down turned into a stone statue. Second fatty, be careful. The last thing that Suzayasu stayed in Li Erpang's eyes was that rough but gentle smile. Completely fixed. Suzayasu completely turned into a stone statue and stood motionless. Dash. Li Erpang suddenly seemed to have gone crazy, grabbing his head with both hands. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Li Erpang. Immediately afterwards, his round and plump fat shrank and disappeared quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye. After blinking again, Li Erpang, who was originally covered in fat, transformed into a muscular man who could drive countless young women crazy. I want you to die. Burn the fat. Li Erpang's eyes were bloodshot and full of madness. I saw him activating his most powerful trump card. After consuming all the fat he had accumulated during this period, he was like a bulldozer. He closed his eyes tightly, used his body as a shield, and hit the Chimera like a cannonball. Passed. Rumble, rumble. The second time. This was already the second time that Suzayasu stood in front of the little fat man in this posture. First the back, then the front. 2 different positions made the little fat man go crazy instantly. He is the only child of the Li family, the arrogant fat man, Li Erpang, but he is an upright man. The beast chimeras seemed to have no idea that this little fat man, who looked inconspicuous and looked very delicious, would erupt with power that even it was afraid of at this moment. Li Erpang slammed his butt into the front of the chimera lion's head and pressed the head firmly with both hands. The moment Li Erpang's hands came into contact with the chimera, the rotting flesh and blood on the surface of the alien beast caused Li Erpang's palms to emit sizzling white smoke. In the blink of an eye, Li Erpang's palms, which had been tempered in countless ways, it was turned red by corrosion, the skin peeled off quickly, and the blood vessels were exposed. But Li Erpang didn't seem to feel the severe pain from his palms at all. Chimera's head was held down by the little fat man, and she also exploded with ferocity. Her whole body tensed and exerted force, and she and the little fat man were pressed against each other like a bullfight. Boom boom boom. Under the little fat man's feet, the ground suddenly cracked, and cracks spread like spider webs, centered on Li Erpang's feet. Li Erpang was not tall to begin with, but in front of the chimera, which was more than 10 meters long and nearly 3 meters tall, he looked like a mini-human, looking so humble and insignificant. After exploding all his strength, Li Erpang used his full strength to sip milk, and the stalemate with chimera lasted only a short moment. The bones all over his body made a crunching sound, and his feet were pressed into the ground bit by bit. At this moment, the little fat man was like a bent steel pipe, getting shorter and shorter. All the bones in his body were wailing and screaming in pain. Li Erpang's whole body was red from holding back, his palms were corroding faster, the blood vessels in his hands were bleeding, and he even lost the sense of pain. Suddenly the pain stopped. But the lack of pain is not a good thing. This shows that the pain-sensing nerve endings in the little fat man's hands have also been damaged. There was no feeling in his hands. But he couldn't retreat. You can't take one step back. Behind it is the stone statue of Suzayasu. Li Erpang gritted his teeth tightly and blood squeezed out from between his teeth. After Zhu Tianzong placed Sheng Chunro in place, he came to kill with his sword. He didn't say anything nonsense. Taking advantage of the stalemate between Li Erpang and Chimera, he jumped up and his feet touched Chimera's back. The ancient sword was unsheathed, and a brilliant sword light swept towards Chimera's other arm. Wing. Chi 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 chi. His ancient sword is so sharp that it can cut through gold and jade. Of course, this may be an exaggerated rhetorical technique. But sharpness is inevitable. However, to Zhu Tianzong's expectation, wherever the sword light pointed, there were only sword marks left on Chimera's wings. There was fishy blood coming out, but there was no sword mark as he imagined. Broken Chimera's wings. This is impossible. In mid-air, Zhu Tianzong, who was as light as a swallow, had no expression on his face. He turned his head slightly and looked at Chimera's other wing that had been chopped off by Yilin. The wing was torn from the middle, and the blackened bones were clearly visible. Only a little bit of skin was left connected together, dripping with blood, and the shape was hideous and terrifying. Such a comparison, there is a difference in realm. How can it be? Impossible. Unscientific. Question marks flashed through Zhu Tianzong's mind. This boss is very tough, he admitted. But there's no reason why he can split it but I can't. Impossible. Thinking of this, Zhu Tianzong gritted his teeth and became even more silent. He raised his sword crazily, and with explosive hand speed, he cut down Chimera's wings, drawing blood. While chopping, Zhu Tianzong even muttered something. With sword, without sword, with sword, without sword, sword or not, who has the sword better? The more he chopped and muttered, the more dazed Zhu Tianzong's cold expression became. Obsessed. After the Chimera chrysanthemum. With a smile on his face, Hu Sandao looked at the butt of the monster as high as the wall in front of him, then at the scalpel in his hand, and shook his head. The anatomy of humans and animals cannot be generalized. He decided to give up. Husandeo is not good at killing bosses of this size. It won't work if we continue like this. No one noticed that a thin shadow was moving quickly under everyone's feet and Chimera's body. The surrounding environment was dark, and the shadows were completely blended into the shadows, looking like ghosts. Night Dire, Cybertron mode. After Yilin sneaked into the shadow state, while everyone started to deal with the Chimera, she thought silently for a while, and finally could only issue instructions to the Night Dire. From the beginning to the present, a Night Dire that had been left aside by Yilin and had not had time to turn off the engine suddenly burst out with red flames from the exhaust pipe. Click, click, click. The parts of the Night Dire's body separate, rotate, jump, and reassemble. A black mecha with red fireworks stood up. Rumble. Night Dire transformed into Cybertron mode, and after adding Styx water to the fuel tank, she gained terrifying power from nowhere. The pitch black armor reflected red and black light in the dark night. Click click click. After the transformation, Night Dire's eyes shot out two bloody neon lights, and the two huge tires on his shoulders rotated wildly, as if they were two propellers, forming two terrifying cyclones behind Night Dire that were visible to the naked eye. Except for the little fat man who had his eyes closed and gritted his teeth as he pressed against the Chimera, and Suzayasu who was petrified and unable to move, the rest of the people were attracted by the sudden movement. The movement of the Night Dire was too great. The roar of the engine, the air waves from the tires on both shoulders, and the rattling sounds of mechanical parts all over the body as they grind together. The Night Dire at this moment is like the Terminator that crushes everything in a science fiction movie, or like a brave little King Kong who suddenly transforms into fighting little monsters. The red light rises into the sky, blinding everyone's eyes. This style of painting is wrong. Husandeo and Zhu Tianzong, who were frantically scraping Chimera, cried out in their hearts. This sudden sci-fi style gave them the illusion of suddenly traveling to the future world. This motorcycle that can transform into a mecha is definitely not a product that can be manufactured in this era and this world. In other words, it's a prop. Goofy sizzle cack cack ah. Nightmare was completely convulsed. Various incomprehensible noises came out from the sound-producing components of the Night Dire. But at this moment, there is no need to understand. No need to communicate. Night Dire, making a brilliant debut. In an instant, the Night Dire, who transformed into a jet black mecha and was clad in red special effects flames, moved like a bull in heat, stamping on the ground and rushing towards the Chimera's head. Wherever the Night Dire passed, the ground cracked and collapsed horribly. Everyone witnessed this legendary scene with their own eyes. An unmanned, 2-meter-tall terrifying mecha, with an invincible aura and speaking slang that no one could understand, suddenly collided with the Chimera. Boom! With a dull sound, Night Dire's steel sledgehammer, driven by the turbocharged tires on its shoulders, was like a small cannonball. Chimera didn't even have time to shout, and the entire lion's head was smashed. It rose upwards, flesh and blood flew, and the clearly identifiable sound of fractures reached everyone's ears. Nightmare's fists suddenly deformed, and sharp blades popped out from between the fingers, turning into rotating blades and slashing towards the Chimera crazily. After Night Dire joined the battlefield, Chimera seemed to feel a fatal threat from Night Dire. She actually left the little fat man alone and flipped up her only remaining wing. She floated in the air for a moment, avoiding attack of the Dire. The size of the Chimera was really too big. With this movement, strong winds blew up all around. Zhu Tianzong and Husandeo, the two non-strength warriors, changed their expressions and were actually thrown away by the Chimera's movement. A few seconds later, Dire and Chimera were already wrestling with each other. The entire mecha nimbly jumped onto Chimera's body, and the sword blades that were constantly rotating with both hands were swishing at Chimera's flesh. Chi chi chi. The chimera screamed in pain and twitched all over. The flesh and blood torn off by the night dire were all corrosive and fell to the ground. In the blink of an eye, white smoke emitted, leaving pits of varying depths. Very scary. It's hard to imagine what it would be like to fight the night dire with flesh and blood. The chimera was being ridden by the night dire, and the pair of eyes that could turn humans to stone revealed complicated emotions. If you look at it carefully, you will see that it contains 3 parts of pain, 3 parts of anger, 3 parts of shyness, and 1 part of unknown fear. Lily hiss. Completely different cries came from the lion's head and the snake's tail, which sounded very miserable. In order to get rid of the scratched night dire on its back, the chimera used only one relatively intact wing to turn and spin crookedly in the low air. He was running around between the tall buildings, as if he was trying to throw off the night dire behind him. Rumble, rumble. Even if chimera doesn't have any weird abilities, a monster of this size is itself a manifestation of destructive power. The fight between night dire and chimera was completely out of the reach of others, and they collided randomly between high-rise buildings. Those unfinished school district buildings, steel bars and foundations were shaken by the impact, and collapsed one after another. Various shapes of stones fell from the sky. Sister Su, Sister Su, Sister Su. Li Erpang finally got away. Without saying a word, he walked up to Suzayasu, who had turned into a stone statue, and hurriedly called Suzayasu's name. But Suzayasu had completely turned into a stone statue, and the smile she showed at the end was frozen forever. Suzayasu didn't react at all to the little fat man's call. Hu Sandao and Zhu Tian walked towards the little fat man. It wasn't that they were paddling, but that ever since that magical and brave little King Kong appeared, the fight between a mecha and a monster had reached a point where humans couldn't interfere. The chimeras were banging against each other like crazy, and the unfinished buildings were crumbling, as if they would collapse at any time. Hu Sandao looked at the sad little fat man and was about to say a few words of comfort, but when he saw the 2 palms of the little fat man clearly, he couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. All the metacarpal bones of the little fat man's 2 palms were exposed, and the skin was completely corroded, leaving only some muscle tissue and tendons barely connected. From the professional perspective of his surgeon, these 2 hands were so injured that under normal circumstances, there would be no other way except amputation to save life. Your hands. Hu Sandao hesitated whether to tell the cruel fact to the little fat man. But the little fat man didn't care at all. He was swaying 3 times to the left and 3 times to the right near Suzayasu's 1.99-meter high stone statue. He patted it here, knocked it here, and poked it. He seemed to be thinking of various ways to rescue Suzayasu from the petrified state. My condolences. Hu Sandao moved his mouth and finally said, I am your sister. My wife is not dead yet, okay. Li Erpang was furious and spoke quickly without realizing that he said something he shouldn't have said. He confirmed again that Suzayasu's profile picture was still on in the communication list. As long as the avatar is not extinguished, it means that Suzayasu is not dead or cold yet, and there is still the possibility of pretending to be a dead body. Zhu Tianzong, who had been silent all this time, suddenly looked in another direction and frowned. Hucky hucky hucky. The little fat man is still studying the stone statue of Suzayasu. Hucky hucky hucky. Hu Sandao also heard the strange sound coming from that direction, and subconsciously followed the sound. Whoosh. Suddenly, a white shadow quickly flashed past several people. There seems to be a strong smell of hot pot. Hu Sandao and Zhu Tianzong subconsciously widened their eyes. The 2 looked at each other. Why do I seem to see a dog flying over? Zhu Tianzong put the ancient sword into its sheath and said in a deep voice, I seem to have seen it too. Dire and Chimera are still struggling. The situation is stalemate. Yilin transformed into a shadow and used this strange ability to quickly shuttle through various terrains, not joining the battlefield for the time being. He kept silently counting the cards he had left. The skill on the cloak, after image magic, had been used when it tore off one of Chimera's wings just now, and it was currently in the cool-down period. This monster can definitely be killed in the end. Yulin had no doubt. After all, he still retains 5 levels of blood will in his body. Once he uses his final trump card Bloodthirsty Catastrophe, and with his explosive attributes, he will use all his means to kill this beast here. It will not be difficult. The cheating time of 210 seconds is completely enough. But in such a stupid state, Yulin didn't want to try it a second time unless it was absolutely necessary. Because he couldn't see Chimera's health bar, Yulin could only estimate Chimera's current condition based on Chimera's performance. Even though this beast was covered in blood and flesh, one of its wings was hanging limply. Hearing the screams was still full of energy, and every scream made Yulin's eardrums buzz and bleed blood. It was conceivable that this Chimera was far from dying. If this continues, the Night Dyer's fuel consumption will be exhausted first. Yulin quickly checked Night Dyer's status on the panel. Night Dyer's ability to erupt with such power, which is enough to fight Chimera in hand-to-hand combat, is nothing more than 2 advantages. 1. The special state that Night Dyer exhibits after adding water from the sticks. 2. The life form of the Night Dyer is special. It is neither biological nor mechanical. Chimera's petrification ability poses no threat to the Night Dyer. It is precisely because of these 2 points that Night Dyer and Chimera are entangled to this day. But if this continues, although the Night Dyer looks very powerful, it is not easy to bear under the Chimera's claws and teeth. The black armor on Night Dyer's body is covered with claw marks of various sizes. In some parts, even the armor has been completely removed. The blood-colored special effects on the body have also faded a lot. It looks like a big pile of rags, with no traces left. The beginning of style. But despite this, Nightmare still faithfully carried out Yulin's orders, dragging Chimera with him at all costs. The Chimera suddenly opened its lion's mouth, and a dazzling fire brewed inside, but before the fire could be sprayed out, it went out again. The sudden flame out of the Chimera aroused the bloody nature of this beast. It used pure physical combat to bite the Night Dyer with all its strength, tearing with its claws, as if it was trying to force the Night Dyer into parts. That's it? In the shadow, Yulin suddenly realized. No wonder he always felt that the abilities displayed by this Chimera were too monotonous. It is almost like a beast that only uses its body to pulsate. After showing the ability to petrify, no more abilities emerge. Fortunately, Yulin was still hiding aside and alert. It seemed that this Chimera had been castrated. Or maybe the Chimera, which was forcibly summoned from other worlds by the Dawn religion through this mysterious and cruel method, had some errors in its state, resulting in the inability to display its true abilities. This could also explain why this Chimera had already begun to rot and become bloody when it was summoned. It doesn't fit into this world. Or perhaps, something went wrong before it came. Right now. There was a faint sound of huffing and puffing in the distance. Woof. Yulin smiled slightly. Finally come. Emperor Wang Tian has arrived on the battlefield. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xuexi. Chapter 330. Although Wang Tiandi is a dog, under the temptation of royal dog food for a whole month, he finally ran out of the hot pot restaurant and arrived at the battlefield at the critical moment without losing his chain. Dog, do it. Woof. Although Emperor Wang Tian was a little dissatisfied with Yulin's omission of his powerful name. But when Wang Tiandi squinted his dog eyes and looked at the Chimera who was having a fierce struggle with Night Dyer from a distance, the hair on his body stood up sternly, the dog's legs were bent, and the whole dog was lying low and crawling, entering a fighting state. Perhaps the shock conveyed by Chimera's huge body was only felt more strongly by Wang Tiandi, who was a beast. The ancients said that only animals understand animals better. The ancients are sincere and I cannot be deceived. In the 10-minute-long fight, only Night Dire and Chimera were singled out, which was very tragic. At this moment, the will behind Night Dire was also removed by the Chimera. His armor was in tatters and he looked very miserable, as if he would be broken into parts at any time. Li Erpang only held on for more than 10 seconds, and his palms were corroded until only bones and flesh remained. The Night Dire can hold up the Chimera for 10 minutes with the strength of a cart, which shows that the Night Dire's potential is astonishing, and this wave of chaos is worth the loss. As the mount of the Night of the Apocalypse, Night Dire itself has the potential to continuously evolve. Yulin believes that the resources invested in Night Dire will one day reap huge rewards. The Chimera and Night Dire monsters, like a whirlwind of clouds, wreaked havoc throughout the unfinished building area, now far away from the initial starting point. Li Erpang, Hu Sandao, Zhu Tianzong, and others were not here. Yulin no longer had the risk of exposing more of her strength, so she took action decisively without any scruples. Yulin has been lurking near the Chimera in shadow mode. Although this beast always felt that the position behind the anus was cool, as if he was being watched by something. Judging from the intelligence displayed by this beast, Yulin is still unable to find out from the shadow state. This is a shadow that has no sense of existence. At this moment, the arrogance on Night Dire's body was almost so weak that only a little red light and shadow remained. Obviously, from the time when the Chimera was sliding around in the sky, until now, the Styx water that Yulin poured into the Dire fuel tank as fuel has been almost exhausted. Night Dire had also reached the end of her crossbow, and the blades between her fingers had cracked and scraped against the Chimera's flesh, unable to cause any more damage. The operation was as fierce as a tiger, and the actual damage was scraping, which is the actual state of Night Dire at this moment. Night Dire, hold on a little longer. Yes, my master. Don't worry, just summon me again when you fall apart. Damn master. The Night Dire was extremely angry, but it had the consciousness of being a summon and a mount. After Yulin gave the order, it risked being dismantled into parts and once again rode on the Chimera's head, pressing it firmly with its hands and feet. Holding the Chimera's head, the turbine on only one shoulder rotated wildly, and the terrible propulsion raged in the steel bars. One monster and one car, in a state of anxiety, suddenly collapsed the floor and fell towards the ground. Boom 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 boom. Dust was rising all over the sky, and Dire and Chimera completely entered their final madness, as if they were treating this unfinished building as a tomb for a deadly battle, and the floors kept collapsing. Pieces of the armor on Night Dire's body peeled off, and the Chimera, which was pressed beneath him, screamed in pain and twisted its body desperately. Its last struggle failed to free Chimera from the entanglement of the Night Dire. Instead, it caused the surrounding buildings to collapse faster. The destructive power brought by its huge size was fully reflected at this moment. Even though the Chimera was much weaker, its huge size alone was not something that ordinary buildings could withstand. Shadow kill. Finally, Yulin, who turned into a shadow and kept moving in strange ways between floors, suddenly appeared near the Chimera's head. On the load-bearing pillar, a thin shadow suddenly twisted and quickly condensed into the shape of Yulin in mid-air. Yulin smiled coldly, and the penetration effect suddenly activated. A cold and infinite mysterious power was once again transmitted to the tip of the knife. With the power to penetrate everything, it appeared out of thin air and penetrated between Chimera's eyes with incomparable precision. Past. Laugh. A large amount of smelly blood gushes out like a fountain, instantly covering Yulin's body. Although Yulin had expected the situation, she did not expect that the blood spurted out so violently. Before the penetration effect had fully taken effect, Yulin was unable to dodge in time in order to achieve the optimal output effect, and allowed this to happen. The corrosive juice sprayed all over him. In an instant, a pain like being burned came from the skin in front of her. Yilin's body was covered in terrible white smoke and blood mist. The corrosive blood destroyed Yilin's Krypton gold equipment in less than 10 seconds. The durability was completely corroded, and holes appeared on it, exposing Yilin's skin. Dionysian factor. The moment Yilin was injured, the Dionysus factor that had been hidden in a secret corner of Yilin's body quickly exerted an astonishing self-healing effect. The health points that were wiped out by a mouthful of blood from the Chimera were quickly restored at a rate of 5% per second, and the burned flesh and blood on the body also quickly squirmed, repaired, and regenerated. The enhanced ability of inhuman self-healing is what allows Yilin to dare to fight the Chimera in close combat. Without the strengthening blessing of the Dionysus factor, Yilin would definitely not choose this front-on stabbing method to deal damage, knowing that Chimera was out of reach. Under the penetrating effect of Shadow Kill, the lion's head was caught off guard, and a bloody hole the size of a fist was instantly poked out. Died. No. No confusion value. Yilin's body repaired quickly. He made a judgment in a split second and retracted the knife decisively without being greedy for damage. He transformed into a shadow and retreated quickly. From the beginning to the present, Yilin has used a total of 1 disaster haunting, 2 shadow killing, and the continuous consumption of shadow state and shadow follower. After using the series of skills, his psychic energy more than half of the value has been consumed, leaving only about 400. In the evolutionary route of the 3 lines of apostles, the characteristics of the apostles on each side are extremely obvious. The power side has thick blood, high attack, short legs, and is particularly durable. However, most of the output methods are single and there is not much change. On the agility side, he has quick speed, quick reactions, and quick attacks. He is good at escaping to save his life. But without effective attack methods or weapons, his output is like scraping against an opponent with high defense. The mental side can release many skills, and the fighting methods are weird and changeable, but unfortunately it is not long-lasting. The skin is brittle and the legs are short, so it is easy to die suddenly. Although Yilin's attributes are growing very fast now and there are no obvious shortcomings, her fighting style is still mainly based on the mental side. Without any skill support, Yilin could not exert her due fighting power with just a handful of blood jasmine. How to control the reasonable consumption of spiritual energy in battle is also a compulsory course for every spiritual apostle. Every spiritual apostle who can survive to the end can be said to be a master of blue control. Wang Tiandi squinted his eyes from a distance. Its eyes seemed to be able to penetrate the billowing smoke and see everything. In an instant, an evil smile appeared on the corner of Wang Tiandi's mouth, showing a ghostly, arrogant, and domineering look. The next moment, Wang Tiandi suddenly spread his legs and ran forward. Behind Wang Tiandi, the tail turned like a helicopter propeller rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it really turned into a propeller, forming a microcyclone above the tail. As Wang Tiandi's furry tail turned faster and faster, the cyclone became more and more violent. The tail was so fast that the shape could not be seen clearly, and only a circle of after-images remained. Wang Tiandi raised one paw high, twisted his butt forcefully, and increased the speed of his tail to the extreme. Suddenly, Emperor Wang Tian flew up. It turns out that if the tail is rotated to the extreme, a dog can spiral into the sky. Hiding in the darkness, Yilin saw a dog turning its tail and rising into the sky from a distance, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have been able to believe that a dog could fly in this way. Ridiculous. This is not scientific at all. How fast does this tail have to turn? Wang Tiandi stretched out one claw straight forward, in a streamlined posture in mid-air, and quickly approached Chimera. Call out. Chimera's head was pierced by Yilin's shadow kill, but she didn't die, but the beast's pupils on the lion's head dimmed a bit. This chimera should be multi-core, and those snake tails should also serve as part of the nerve center function. Wait a minute, it is completely illogical to use existing scientific theories to explain the rationality of the existence of this kind of creature that does not exist on the Earth. Heart, tail. Where are the weaknesses? Yulin used her previous experience in fighting monsters to quickly deduce the chimera's weaknesses. Or is it possible that during the summoning process, the chimera was also controlled by the rules of the tower and had to completely empty its health points? Since the tower has issued a mandatory reality mission, this monster should have something special. It was not meant to exist in this world. While Yulin was thinking, Emperor Wang Tian has joined the battle group. I saw it changing its posture in mid-air, its claws curled up around its waist, and an invisible force condensed between its claws. Emperor Wang Tian made a tone of unknown meaning. But it sounded like he was holding his breath. Woof, woo, woof, woo. Emperor Wang Tian suddenly opened his dog eyes. The moment he opened his dog eyes, Wang Tian's claws, which he had been holding on his waist for a long time, suddenly gathered into a chrysanthemum shape, and pushed forward with a distance of more than 10 meters from Chimera. Woof! A deafening bark resounded through the sky. Accompanied by the barking, Wang Tiandi pushed out his claws. Almost at the same time, the Chimera, who was fighting the night dire left, right, up and down, was inseparable. The snake tails behind her suddenly stood up. They all stood up and looked in the direction of Emperor Wang Tiandi. Boom! The next moment, Chimera's huge body shook violently, and a depression in the shape of a dog's claw flesh ball suddenly appeared on the bloody back. It collapsed deeply, and there was even a crisp crackling sound. The sound of fractures. Boom! The Chimera fell suddenly, blood spurted out from all its mouths at the same time, and its limbs and wings twitched at the same time. Obviously Wang Tiandi's shot hit the vital point and reached the depths. Chimera was seriously injured. Yulin was shocked. He looked at Wang Tiandi, whose tail was spinning in the air and spiraling into the sky. After using that move, Wang Tiandi's expression became much sluggish, and the color of his hair also became much duller. He looked as if he had become soft, and he no longer had the high spirits he had at the beginning. Yulin's face was expressionless. What kind of skill is this? A palm technique that fell from the sky? Emperor Wang Tian indeed did not break his promise. For the royal dog food for that whole month, it used its trump card that had been hidden for a long time. With a palm move that fell from the sky, it suddenly knocked down the Chimera, severely injuring it and spurting blood everywhere. But Chimera isn't dead yet. Chimera was very miserable at the moment. When she was summoned to this world, Chimera was not in the best condition. For some reason, her flesh and blood rotted all over her body. After landing in the unfinished building area in the northwest of Itai City, Chimera was surrounded and beaten from beginning to end. Even though the damage caused to Chimera by others was equivalent to scraping, the whole layer of skin was scratched, and whoosh, the smell of blood is definitely not pleasant. What's more, in order to prevent this beast from flying into the sky again and occupying the advantageous position, Yulin targeted its wings from the very beginning. At the beginning, one of its wings was severely damaged, creating a certain advantage for the follow-up. A beast that can't fly is not much different from an ordinary boss. As long as you have a health bar, you can kill him. It's just a matter of time. What Yulin didn't expect was that Suzayasu was petrified by the beast and turned into a stone statue. However, Chimera's petrification ability is not so overbearing that no one can stop it. You must look into his eyes to trigger the petrification effect. Yulin has telekinesis as her perception. Even with her eyes closed, the impact on Yulin is not too big. Wang Tiandi's unknown palm technique falling from the sky was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. But this camel does not refer to the Chimera, but to this building. After the meatball-shaped palm print appeared on the Chimera's back, A huge driving force completely acted on the chimera and the floor under its feet. Rumble. The unfinished building was of low quality and very fragile. When the chimera instantly fell to the ground, the surrounding steel bars bent, broke, and collapsed. In the blink of an eye, the chimera and nightmare were buried in the messy ruins. The whole building collapsed. Wang Tiandi seemed to have no intention of taking responsibility for his actions. He flicked his tail and spiraled up into the sky, floating in the air, feeling listless. It whined softly, raised its paws softly towards Yilin, and made a V-shaped gesture, then turned around and flew away slowly. The image on its back was very much like that of a scumbag leaving in a carefree manner. What the hell? Are you done now? Yilin always felt that everything that happened after Wang Tiandi made his debut was full of flaws, but for a while, she didn't know where to start. Next, which trump card should I use? A mediocre banana peel? This chimera is not human, so it may not be useful. Bloodthirsty disaster? The side effects are too great to consider right now. A mediocre pen? This is a defensive artifact, and its output doesn't seem to be of much help. Fusion must be successful card? Yilin's expression froze. She looked at Wang Tiandi's butt swaying far away and gave up the plan instantly. There is no one around me. Who should I integrate with? With a dog. Every prop in the storage space, every skill and enhancement on the attribute bar flashed quickly in Yilin's mind. Yilin turned into an erratic shadow, feeling a little tangled in her heart. In the ruins, the chimera and the night dire were crushed in a large piece of rubble. The night dire's light had completely dimmed, and it was unknown whether it was broken into parts. However, the chimera was buried in the ruins, and there were still screams and screams. The earth comes out of the earth and stone. From the sound of the sound, the chimera seems to be no longer as fierce as it was at first, but it is probably still difficult to fight with it. After all, humans who have not yet reached the transcendent realm have to fight hand to hand with such monsters in human bodies. It's too much to think about. Didn't you see that the little fat man just rushed forward and even lost his palm? Yilin was in the shadow state, very safe, and hesitated for 5 seconds. In these 5 seconds, the chimera has struggled to rise again from the ruins, spreading its scarred wings and once again setting off waves of violent wind and rock waves. Now I have very little spiritual power left. If the spirit seance mode is turned on, this monster may not be completely eliminated. Although this wave of chaos points may not be a lot, it must be obtained. Yilin's current means of strongest output are nothing more than the spirit subjugation mode of the possessed weapon, and the grasp of annihilation. But he can still hit 2 more shots with the grip of annihilation. After 2 shots, his spiritual energy is exhausted and he will fall into the most dangerous situation. Unless it can trigger the annihilation effect. Yilin is fully aware of the terrifying effect of annihilation. In Styx Junior High School, the terrifying monster could not resist the annihilation effect at all, and everything in that square was completely turned into nothingness. Annihilation. Yilin silently stared at the chimera twisting crazily in the ruins. Its scream seemed to contain 3 parts of arrogance, 3 parts of anger, 3 parts of pain, and 1 part of deeply hidden frustration. 3 seconds later, Yilin's eyes narrowed and he took out a card from the storage space. A card that he had just obtained not long ago and hadn't had time to think about how to use it. In the shadow state, Yilin took out the card and moved quickly in the shadow cast by the ruins. At this moment, Chimera finally stood up. There was chaos all around. Let alone the unfinished building, now even the building is gone, only the unfinished building remains. The Chimera stood alone in the center of the ruins, surrounded by rubble cleared by its huge body, making it look like a small, empty arena. The moonlight shines. In the darkness, Chimera's figure looked particularly dazzling. His beast eyes that had lost their light were dim and dull. The snake tails on the back twisted crazily behind the Chimera, making strange hissing noises. If Chimera is a multi-life Chimera, one head means one life. Yilin suddenly thought of a possibility. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain why the Chimera was still alive and kicking after Yilin killed the largest lion head in penetration mode. This kind of creature that does not belong to this world can no longer be speculated with common sense. Etc. Yilin suddenly thought of a combo. The shadow-breaking strike of shadow killing does not stipulate that it must be attacked with a weapon to be considered as shadow-breaking. What would happen if the penetration effect of this shadow-breaking blow was added to the skill? Even the description of skill effects has to be a text trap. It's really your fault. Yilin no longer hesitated. If he hesitated any longer, the Chimera might start jumping around again. Now is the best opportunity. That beast was now like a dying beast trapped in the Colosseum with its wings broken, gasping for breath and regaining its blood. Yilin didn't know whether Chimera had the ability to heal itself quickly, but he knew that if Chimera had a chance to breathe and recover, everyone in this unfinished building area would die. This time, I hope you are really playing word games. In the shadow, Yilin chuckled. He crushed the card. Suddenly. Sure enough, the Chimera was really gasping for blood. The snake head on its buttocks suddenly turned its pointed head, and its cold vertical pupils looked at a certain direction in the ruins at the same time. Chimera. There was a shadow there that no one could detect. The shadow is very thin, perfectly projected on the edge of the ruins, very hidden and very sinister. That's how it should be. But Chimera, who was gasping for breath and regaining her health, couldn't help but slowly typed a question mark, and the snake heads looked in that direction. It was originally unable to notice the shadow. But I don't know why. Above the shadow, a strange special effect suddenly appeared. A spear fell from the sky. Immediately afterwards, another spear fell from the sky. One more moment. Another one. In a very short period of time. That shadow was filled with shadows of spears. Those spears were of different shapes, sizes, and lengths. Put together, it looks like a tomb. Behind the spears inserted upside down, a big E suddenly appeared, like some mysterious rune, overlooking the world. Let's not talk about the confused Chimera. The Lancer's Blessing. Grade Rare. Effect: after using it on the target, within 5 minutes, you will receive Lancer's Blessing, and the luck value will decrease at 0.1/second, and the total luck value will not exceed 4.0. Instructions: click to view details. Select target. The target of this mysterious blessing card is not Chimera, but myself. That's why there was a scene where countless spears were inserted into shadows. When Yilin got this card for the first time, she felt that this rare card was full of bad taste. He originally planned to use it on some people who didn't like it, maybe he could find some fun. But now, he had spears stuck all over his head. A big E that shines brightly. Yilin was a little confused. What kind of special effects is this? A good card will take effect as soon as it takes effect. Why do you have so many fancy special effects? This is outrageous. This is too much. Yilin felt as if she had been cheated. But the prop effect has been activated. It cannot be reversed. It's also impossible for special effects to disappear suddenly. With the blessing of this mysterious special effect, even if Yilin is in a shadow state and has walking like a shadow turned on, it is impossible to continue hiding. On Yilin's apostle panel, the luck value column, which was as high as 2.6, was rapidly declining at a rate of 0.1/second, which was very scary. Behind Yilin, the effect of the spear has disappeared, but a big E still appears above his head, shining brightly. This E is like a beacon in the darkness, illuminating Yilin's shadow. Chimera, who was confused by the big E, finally reacted. It moved like a bulldozer, rushing towards the guiding light E, and swatted at Yilin's shadow with one claw. Yulin had anticipated this kind of consequences after seeing the ghostly special effects. As soon as the chimeras started to move, Yulin nimbly dodged over. Boom! The ruins, which were already in a mess, were even more cracked by the chimera's claws, sending dust and gravel flying all over the sky. Yulin didn't take action yet. He is waiting. Shadows moved and dodged behind the chimera's butt and behind. On the panel, the luck value is decreasing at the speed of light. 1.5, 1.4, 1.3, 1.2, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, 0. Finally, it's down to 0. The twisted shadow suddenly twisted and condensed behind Chimera, and Yulin emerged from the shadow silently. He skillfully put away the blood jasmine and pointed it toward the Chimera's ass. He spread his fingers and slightly bent them, signaling the start of the skill and locking onto that space. Lines that only he could see were quickly outlined behind Chimera. Annihilation. Lucky value, minus 0.1. Congratulations to Apostle 1010, who broke through the lower limit of luck with his unremitting efforts and amazing perseverance. Yulin. The 5 fingers he was about to squeeze suddenly got stuck in front of him. Understand and strengthen Echo of Doom. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 331. Even Yulin, who has rich experience in the rules of the tower, couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. Luck value, actually has a negative number? Breaking through the lower limit of luck? He actually realized how to strengthen it? Yulin suddenly understood. In an instant. Somehow, his consciousness seemed to be connected to some existence. Countless information poured into his mind like an enlightenment. Echoes of doom. When Yulin opened her eyes again, her 2 pupils had completely turned into jet black, pitch black, and lifeless. But he didn't see that at this moment. In the depths of his eyes, lines of data flow as small as hair, flowing rapidly through his pupils, making it impossible to distinguish them clearly. It turns out that even the lucky value has a lock dot. Towards the positive direction, 10 o'clock is the limit. If you go in the opposite direction and break through the lower limit of 0, you can break through this layer of luck. It's just that for most apostles, the luck value and charm value are fixed, so no one can discover this secret. Yulin understood. Painful realization. At this moment, he seemed to be the embodiment of doom. His every move will bring unforgettable misfortune to every enemy. Yulin smiled slightly and resumed her stiff movements. The 5 fingers were spread towards the Chimera's ass, slightly bent. Lines that only he could see re-outlined a space behind Chimera. But that line, in Yulin's eyes now, turned into an ominous black. The luck value is still declining. Yulin suddenly had the illusion that something was quickly converging on her head. This feeling is difficult to describe and mysterious, but Yulin just understands it. With the addition of the prop lancer's blessing, Yulin's luck value unexpectedly exceeded the lower limit of luck value. There is something strange about the effect description of Grasp of Annihilation. The power of the skill is directly related to the measurement attributes, but the trigger of annihilation is related to the luck value. There is no explanation in the effect. The higher the luck value, the easier it is to trigger the annihilation effect. This is a damn word trap. So when Yulin casually triggered the annihilation effect in Styx Junior High School, she felt a little strange. According to normal logic, he is not Lao Pan. With this poor luck value, it should be difficult to trigger the annihilation effect. Didn't you see that Disaster Haunted has a 60% chance of triggering multiple negative effects, but it hasn't been triggered a few times? One can imagine how badly he was deceived by this damn lucky value. But the annihilation effect was triggered. According to probability theory, this is such a terrible little luck. Therefore, Yulin speculated that the probability of triggering the annihilation effect was not that the higher the luck value, the easier it was to trigger, but that the lower the luck value, the easier it was to trigger. After using this prop, Yulin guessed the beginning, but not the ending. But, it smells so good. In Yulin's eyes, which were as dark as ink, stream after stream of data flashed through. In my thoughts, the dark lines have been outlined. You are quite powerful. A monster has endured our beatings to this day. It's a pity. I hope you will be weird in your next life. Yulin finished speaking. Smile slightly. The 5 fingers that were spread out suddenly clenched. In the darkness. Another area of the unfinished building. Li Erpang clung to the stone statue of Suzayasu. Don't dare to leave. Although Li Erpang didn't want to be tricked to death in Sister Su's bed in this life. But watching Suzayasu turn into a lifeless stone statue, the little fat man felt very uncomfortable. Why is this? Li Erpang stroked back and forth around Suzayasu's stone statue, lost in thought and looking confused. After a while, Li Erpang murmured to himself, this is to repay a favor. By the way, I am repaying a favor. Hu Sandeo, it's love. Zhu Tianzong, love. Woof. What a bastard. Fat man, how could I possibly like a woman with this body type? Li Erpang was furious when he heard the voice in his ear, and he suddenly became angry. He woke up from his thoughts and searched around to see who was spitting blood. Hu Sandeo was carefully picking his nails with a scalpel. Zhu Tianzong put away his sword again, stood aside, closed his eyes and rested, silently showing off. Their expressions were as if the person who just spoke was not them at all, very innocent. Damn it! This. Li Erpang suddenly realized that it was difficult for him to get angry because they were so shameless. So the little fat man could only find another topic to break the embarrassment. Will the kid be okay? Hearing this, Hu Sandeo continued to pick his nails with a scalpel and chuckled, don't you think you still haven't figured out what the initial grouping of this so-called lights-out operation is all about? When Li Erpang heard this, his expression became even more confused. What the hell? Hu Sandeo raised his head and was about to say something. Zhu Tianzong suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction where terrible noises had been heard from time to time not long ago. He grimaced and said in a cold voice, quiet. Li Erpang squinted his eyes. Only then did he notice that a dog that looked somewhat familiar was squatting near Hu Sandeo. What the hell? Isn't this dog guarding the door of a hot pot restaurant? When did it come here? Just when a few people were waiting boredly and bragging about paddling. Everyone present had prompts appearing in front of their retinas at the same time. Confirmed death. Congratulations on completing the mandatory limited time mission, complete annihilation. Now, task rewards will be distributed based on task contribution. Acquire death points. Li Erpang had an indifferent expression and stared blankly at the prompts in front of him. For a while, he still didn't come back to his senses. Ah, this? Is that all? Why so fast? He hasn't even started to really exert his strength yet. Isn't all this fat burned in vain? Because of the real mission, the mission reward is only a massive amount of DP, and there are no other special rewards. DP rewards are awarded based on each person's contribution in the task. Although the little fat man used his ultimate move, which completely burned the fat, his defensive power was exchanged for terrifying power, and he could even challenge the giant beast head-on, which was extremely terrifying. But in his extreme anger, he just ignored Chimera and did not cause much damage to the boss. As a result, Li Erpang finally gained very little DP. A moment later, Li Erpang silently raised his palms with only bones left, and couldn't help crying. Crying so loudly. This wave is a huge loss. Look, hee. Hu Sandeo's expression showed that this was indeed the case. Wang Tiandi looked tired, and it seemed to have received the reminder that the task was completed, and sat down to rest contentedly. Although Goza's playing time is short, he is very efficient. A direct shot of woof 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 caused tons of damage to the monster, which was enough to gain a lot of wool. The dog was satisfied and raised the corners of his mouth, looking evil and arrogant, very arrogant. A few minutes later, far away, a figure in a black tuxedo walked out of the darkness step by step. It's Yiren. Tisk. For some reason, Li Erpang felt a little unhappy. He always had the illusion of being deceived. When Yilin approached, Hu Sandao asked with a smile, "That's good. We were all very surprised that we were able to defeat this terrible boss alone." Yilin shook his head. Seeing that there were no outsiders around, he took off the mask and said, "No, it's actually none of my business. Just when I was almost beaten to death by that monster, a mysterious friend happened to pass by. It was very powerful, and the monster was taken care of in the blink of an eye, and I still don't understand what happened." Finished. Seeing the disbelief on the others' faces, Yilin added seriously, "Really, an unknown friend passed by?" Hu Sandao lowered his head and picked his nails again. Zhu Tianzong smiled coldly. Click, click, click. Li Erpang suddenly noticed that Yilin had a big E on top of her head, and asked in surprise, "What is that thing on top of your head?" Yilin waved his hand, and he quietly glanced at the luck value on the panel that had not yet returned to normal, and said casually, "This is a life-saving prop. You can only survive thanks to this prop." Rumble. Hu Sandao, who was picking his nails, suddenly raised his head and frowned slightly. "Did you hear anything?" Li Erpang shook his head and looked around. Yes, but hasn't the boss been killed by a friend? Why does it sound like something is about to collapse?" Hear the words. Yilin's expression changed slightly. He raised his head and looked above everyone's heads. The next second, Yilin yelled, Run." Li Erpang and others were so frightened by Yilin's sudden running that they were stunned for a moment. Boom. A stone with steel bars fell from the air and hit not far away, making a dull sound. Everyone raised their heads. Run. This area has been ravaged by Chimera for around. The structure is unstable and is in danger of collapse. It is crumbling. But for some reason, it didn't collapse sooner or later, but after Yilin finished fighting the boss and returned, all the unfinished buildings were blown by the wind, swaying, and started to collapse at the same time. Church. Li Erpang was so frightened that he broke into a cold sweat. He immediately put the stone statue of Suzayasu on his shoulders and ran towards the distance as if lifeless. He could swear to God that this was the fastest he had ever run in his life. Maybe there will be a next time. Rumble, rumble. Several people ran wildly, and behind them, high-rise buildings that had not yet been built collapsed one after another. This situation is like the end of the world. The ground is shaking, high-rise buildings are collapsing, and the sky is filled with dust. It is very shocking. 10 minutes later, several people looked at the ruins in front of them and remained silent. Li Erpang was stunned. How could a house in a good school district collapse immediately? Isn't this scientific? Who gives this money? Who takes the blame? Li Erpang immediately thought of this problem. Hu Sandao was still in shock. He was panting slightly, not caring about his unfinished nails. Looking at the messy ruins in the distance, a trace of doubt flashed across his expression. It's strange. Logically speaking, that monster has been struggling for a long time. Everything is fine. Why did it collapse just because it collapsed? He expressed the doubts in everyone's mind. Yilin's face was expressionless. After this wild run, the special blessing effect, the E above his head finally disappeared. He checked the apostle panel again. After the effect of Lancer's blessing disappeared, his luck value, which had exceeded the lower limit, finally returned to a high of 2.6. The wind was quite strong just now. Maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yilin said expressionlessly. At this time, Even when he was running wildly, Zhu Tianzong, who had always kept a straight face and pretended to be cool, hesitated and finally spoke on his own initiative. "There is one thing that I don't know whether to talk about or not." But Zhu Tianzong spoke quickly without waiting for anyone else to answer. "That woman is gone." Shortly after, in the air, there was the sound of a propeller turning rapidly. From far to near. And there's more than one. In the distance, searchlights swayed rapidly in the ruins, searching for survivors. More than 20 armed helicopters, majestic, lined up in groups and approached quickly. From the orderly formation displayed when flying, it can be seen at a glance that this group of armed helicopters is absolutely professional and unambiguous. A few minutes later, the searchlight of one of the armed helicopters spotted several people sitting on the ground. B-13578 found a friendly side. It found a friendly side. There are 4 survivors visually, huh? There seems to be a dog. Over. On one of the armed helicopters, Zhao Yulong stood facing the wind. If he were peeing against the strong wind at this moment, he might be able to urinate a few inches. He was full of energy and his face was red. He quickly issued orders one after another. "Rescue survivors immediately. Everyone be vigilant, seal off the scene, and carry your weapons. You never know what enemy you are about to face. Once you find an inhuman target, shoot immediately, without hesitation, pour out your artillery fire. The rest is up to you to do whatever you want." In all the communication channels, the field personnel of the special team, who were armed to the teeth, echoed in unison, "Yes." But a few seconds passed. Someone asked weakly in the communication channel. "Report. Excuse me, does that dog need to be fired as well?" "Dog? Oh, this. Wait, don't. That dog can't move." When Zhao Yulong heard that someone was about to attack the dog, he broke into a cold sweat and quickly stopped him. Although others were full of doubts about Zhao Yulong's slightly panicked tone, the military orders were overwhelming and everyone took action quickly. All the armed helicopters dispersed. When approaching the ground, military ropes were thrown down. All field personnel used their equipment to fasten the ropes and slid down from the armed helicopters in an orderly but rapid manner. Zhao Yulong smoothed his hair coquettishly, opened the cabin door, jumped directly out of the air. Whoosh! In mid-air. In order to avoid messy hairstyle, Zhao Yulong also took out a small comb and combed his hair carefully. As he approached the ground, Zhao Yulong's free-falling figure suddenly dropped in speed and landed gently, just in front of Yilin and others. Zhao Yulong put away his comb, raised the corners of his mouth, stood proudly with his hands behind his back, and said slowly, "Am I handsome?" Yilin lowered his head and frowned. Li Erpang put down the stone statue of Suziasu. Hu Sandao picked at his nails. Zhu Tianzong closed his eyes, his expression stern, as cold as a sword. Wang Tiandi silently stretched out his paw, pulled down his ears, covered them tightly, and closed his dog eyes at the same time. When Zhao Yulong saw the reaction of this group of people, he immediately couldn't laugh or cry, "You guys should give me some reaction." Yilin waved her hands helplessly, "What kind of reaction do you want? Everyone is tired." "Right." Zhao Yulong immediately stopped blaming them. He remembered the business, looked around, put on a fighting posture, and said with vigilance, "Where is the monster?" Oulele said. "Where is it now? This place has been destroyed like this. The strength of that monster must be very terrifying. I didn't expect it. The monsters in the other world will be summoned to the real world. This is an unprecedented major abnormal event. But don't worry, I have brought all the elite field teams from the special forces. No matter what kind of monster, under the fire of modern technology, everything will be wiped out." Li Erpang curled his lips, "The monster is gone long ago. An echo came out of Zhao Yulong's mouth, me, 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 me. Yilin ruthlessly hit the target, the boss is dead, you're too late. Zhao Yulong. A moment later. Yilin and others finally understood the reason why Zhao Yulong was so showy today. This guy was clearly here to fight the boss, but he was wearing a crisp suit and small leather shoes. Don't say he's here to fight the boss, this guy is clearly here for a date. Most of the armed helicopters were parked in the open space outside the ruins. 3 armed helicopters were left, hovering in the sky on standby and vigilance. This area has been cordoned off and no unauthorized persons are allowed to enter. It is said that the owner of this unfinished building in the school district learned that the school district house he had worked so hard to build turned into dust overnight, suffered a heart attack, and was sent to the hospital. In the ambulance, the boss cried so loudly and miserably that it saddened those who heard it and made those who heard it cry. Are you Yilin? This is the first time we meet. My name is Yu Meng. A tall woman with long hair hanging over her shoulders, with an indifference on her face that made people look away from her, stretched out her hand towards Yilin. Yilin looked at this woman. Yuman. Descendants of Yuan dynasty emperors. As for why the surname is Yu, it is said that there have been studies in history. During the war, the Yuan dynasty was about to fall, and the royal family fled one after another. In order to hide their identities, the descendants of the Yuan dynasty emperors changed their surnames one after another and survived. After hundreds of years of secret development, among the anonymous descendants of the Yuan dynasty, only the Yu family survived and flourished. After the rise of ancient martial arts in the Ming dynasty, the Yu family reappeared strongly and rose rapidly, and now became a member of the Z5 Council. The detailed history will not be mentioned for now. Information about Yu Meng flashed through Yilin's mind, and she gently shook the woman's outstretched hand, and then let it go. This is the woman Zhao Yulong has a crush on. No. Ming love. It is estimated that everyone in the special group, from top to bottom, inside and outside, can tell that Zhao Yulong likes this woman. Yu Meng's eyes were large, with brown pupils without any emotion, and a tall nose, full of exotic flavor, resembling a mixed-race person. Her long, slightly curly hair was draped casually over her shoulders, and her decent uniform couldn't hide Yu Meng's figure, which was bulging and the car lights were dazzling. This woman has extraordinary strength. And the level is estimated to be very high. Much higher than the current Yilin. Yilin even suspected that at this stage, Yu Meng had unlocked a layer of locks. The brief contact, the momentary eye contact, suddenly gave Yilin a very dangerous vigilance in her heart. While others were quickly handling the scene and cleaning up the aftermath, Yilin reported the entire incident to Zhao Yulong. Of course, he would omit what should be omitted and would not say what should not be said. Yilin knew this well. All dead? Those bastards. When Zhao Yulong learned that all the missing people, as well as many of the controlled believers, had committed suicide in that strange summoning ceremony, his face showed anger and murderous intent. He also didn't expect that this Dawn sex methods would be so weird. Regarding how Jamira died in the end, Yilin still said the same thing, insisting that there was a friend. Whether they believe it or not, there is no evidence. But what Yilin didn't expect was that when Zhao Yulong asked about this friend again, his expression would become more solemn. Yu Meng, who was silent on the side, also had a flash of strange color in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. They actually believed it? What does the friend you are talking about look like? Have you seen it clearly? This? Yilin closed her eyes, as if remembering. Do they really believe it? Or cooperate with the acting? Do you see it but don't tell it? Are you all still good friends? Thinking of this, Yilin also casually mentioned the characteristics of the mysterious friend. The man should be quite young, with a detached temperament, and his hair is a bit long. In the chaos, I only saw the back, and I don't know the rest. Yilin finished speaking. Zhao Yulong's expression became even more serious. The acting is very good. Yilin silently gave Zhao Yulong a thumbs up. Li Erpang almost laughed out loud. Zhao Yulong and Yu Meng looked at each other, and the two of them did not continue to be entangled in the mysterious friend matter. He recalled Yuren's experience in the bust of Buddha. You said you were at the scene and saw a mysterious man who used an ability. He was an apostle? Even you were affected? You are on the spiritual side. Yilin once again described the radiant scene on the mysterious man. But regarding what he saw in the fantasy, Yilin naturally ignored it smoothly. It's very possible, otherwise the source of his weird ability cannot be explained. I speculate that he is likely to be the core figure of the Dan religion, and the weirdness of those missing people and believers is likely to be related to that ability. If you guessed it right, it should be an ability similar to forced hypnosis, so that people who fall into that ability will have their cognition changed without even realizing it. Zhao Yulong closed his eyes and frowned into a chrysanthemum shape. After a moment of silence, he nodded. The ability of the mysterious man you mentioned is a skill or some kind of enhancement. It is somewhat similar to Hu Sandao's psychic surgery. But the effect is even more domineering. Hu Sandao ran his hands through his hair casually with 2 fingers, shook his head helplessly, and said, "It's far from enough. Mine is a single target skill, and that guy's group skills are different. There's a big difference here. Right now." Yu Meng suddenly looked at Yilin, and his emotionless eyes seemed to carry a kind of scrutiny from a superior to a subordinate, giving people an invisible oppression. "How did you wake up?" Although Yilin found Yu Meng's tone a bit unpleasant, for Zhao Yulong's sake, Yilin didn't say anything more. This night, too many things happened, and there were still many questions among them, which Yilin had not had time to sort out carefully. At this moment, Yu Meng asked about his experience inside the bust of Buddha. Yilin carefully recalled the feeling at that time. After more than 10 seconds, he answered the question. "You may not believe it, but I felt someone tap me on the back of the head and I woke up. Maybe this is the legendary enlightenment." Li Erpang's eyes widened. Hu Sandao sneered. Zhu Tianzong smiled coldly. Wang Tiandi covered his ears tighter. It was so miserable to have such good hearing that he couldn't even block out such nonsense. Zhao Yulong opened his mouth wide. Yu Meng's face was expressionless. Yilin finished speaking. Realizing that there was something wrong with the other people's reactions, he frowned. "What do you mean?" "Except Yu Meng and Wang Tiandi." The others actually said in unison, "I believe you are a ghost." Yilin was stunned by the spray. How come no one believes you when you tell the truth? At that time, he really felt as if someone had slapped him on the back of his head. The world is getting worse. Yilin sighed secretly. At the same time, outside the ruins, several kilometers away, it's sparsely populated. It was late at night after all. A young man wearing light down, smiling, walking on the road. Behind him, followed a woman wearing a hospital gown with pale skin and a thin face. Sure enough, half-baked summoning can't summon the real God. All the hard work during this period is in vain. The woman following the young man raised her head. If Yilin and others were here at this moment and could see the scene, they would definitely use all their skills without hesitation and hit the young man's face without any precautions or any nonsense. She is none other than Sheng Chunro, who mysteriously disappeared from the ruins of the unfinished building. There was a hint of fanaticism in Sheng Chunro's empty eyes. He, embrace the dawn. Forget it, I'll do it next time. The young man smiled slightly and took out an ancient scroll from the backpack behind him. With a flick of the scroll, the ancient scroll was enlarged several times, wrapping the young man and Sheng Chunro in it. In the blink of an eye, after the ancient scroll squirmed strangely, the two figures disappeared. The ancient scroll seemed to have come to life, suspended in mid-air, rolled up automatically, and then flew into the night sky with a swish, and soon disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never appeared before.